Hello everyone, welcome back. This is your host Gabriel Marrero, and you're listening to Collapse Talk, and I appreciate y'all tuning back in. We have a lot to talk about. Very exciting time, just exciting news in general, and we just have a lot to catch up on. But primarily, I just want to thank y'all for tuning in. At least, with this new period, trying to balance between work. Although I am on my summer vacation, so I did have some downtime, but I want to at least stay consistent with the show, this podcast, and some other projects in mind. Yeah, I've always trying to expand on what I'm doing, and I really would like to be more consistent. But of course, there's only so much time that I can dedicate to this program. But yeah, otherwise, I want to thank y'all for tuning in, staying consistent with me, and we'll just dive right into the going-ons in the world, new updates in the world, and a lot has happened in the last month. So there's a lot to talk about. Before I continue, at least with the main stories and issues, I at least want to plug in some of my funding, so that way you can support me. I do have a Patreon, so that is something that you can check out there. But yeah, otherwise we will continue. So yeah, as I said, there's a lot to talk about, and with this show, and if you're not familiar with this show, I like to divide the show between different sections. So first off, I like to do domestic politics, domestic issues within the United States, and then international geopolitics or economics, and then also the third section being natural disasters, climate, all those sort of issues in mind. There's a lot to happen, because there's the collapse that we're undergoing, and it's interesting, at least with these developments, because there'll be times where it's kind of slow and there's nothing happening, and then there's things that speed things up, and then it just escalates, especially during the summer. It's always been my experience that during the summer, a lot of things happen, which kind of makes sense. Like, it gets hot, and especially with like the weather, all these different natural disasters, and also just people being active and just unrest in general. And there's a lot of theories I've read that kind of highlight that whenever there's heat, there's violence. There's more prone for violence, or at least that's just a theory, which I should find. That's something I should look into more. But yeah, at least before we continue on that, since we're talking about domestic politics first, there have been some, I would say, exciting developments. I don't know if exciting is the right word. Certainly interesting, intriguing, unprecedented, if you want to say, because we've had, firstly, the second indictment and even arrest even of Donald Trump over charges in Miami. This guy is getting hammered, man, by the law. Like I don't want to be too much like a resistance liberal head right now, but yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of like a comeuppance, like, oh man, like, let's fucking do it. Like, I don't know, it's just funny. It really is funny, considering how this guy has been like a con man, since like the 70s, this like slumlord, real estate mogul, con artist, and then now all of a sudden, he's getting his comeuppance. He achieved the highest position in office, and then now this is the downfall, or at least I hope this is his downfall. I mean, who knows? There's always like wishful thinking with these sort of things, but it's So as I said, Trump, he. I mean, of course, he's getting indicted for all sorts of issues, but they're really sticking on the classified documents, his holding of very sensitive information, and again, it's just so funny how like he tried to get away with this. Like, what was he even trying to achieve? Like, he just took these documents, and it's just like, what important details are in these documents? Why does he want to hold on to it? Like, I just don't know. It's just so, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess he's one of those people, like, it's impulsive. Like, he just has to do it because, like, that's all he knows. So, like, it's just like, it makes no sense, but then you realize that he's like a compulsive person. So then it makes sense when he's like a compulsive con artist. So he can't help himself. Yeah. And then you look at the leaked documents or the photos of like the way they stored it. It's just like, it's like Mar-A-Lago, like they absolutely have like vault rooms or like safe rooms and stuff. and like this shit is like in his fucking bathroom, in like a garage, and like, dude, this guy is just so sloppy. But that's the thing, like when you've been doing this for years, and like, especially in like a place like New York, where you're like you can buy off the DA, right? Like all those different officials. Yeah, it's like of course you could be sloppy because like who's going to prosecute you? But now times have changed. Now New York kind of cleaned itself up, and our federal system, less corruptible. Yeah, it's just interesting to watch all this happen. But let's at least dive into the specific arrangement that he had, where he was arrested and went in front of a judge, or he was booked and formally arrested, and then he was released. So it's like it's not even like a real thing. I mean, this is the thing, because like if this was like a regular Joe Schmo, like if this was me, like they would have clapped me in irons, and like I would never see daylight for like even throughout the whole like arrangement process, like the pre-trial phase, like they would lock you up. But for him, they just like take his fingerprints, put him in front of a judge, and then this whole court process is going to proceed. I don't know, when it comes to legal processes, I'm not too familiar, but here at least we'll speak on what happened on Tuesday. And also, it's funny because, or yesterday, I forgot this happened yesterday. I'm recording on Wednesday. But it's interesting too, the place that this happened, because he was booked in Miami. So initially the first indictment was in New York over New York crimes and like fraud issues. But then this specific like classified documents, it's in Miami, like Florida, which is so funny because Florida is like a Trump haven, right? And I believe even this judge that's prosecuting him, like they're also a Trump appointed judge. So it's just so funny. This is happening in the heart of Trump land in Miami, which is like really deep red actually, which is surprising, mainly because of the Cubans. But yeah, like this is it's funny. It's like it's just a nice way to send a message to this whole MAGA horde, I guess, of people, this cult, really what it is, that he cannot escape the law. So let me at least read from CNN, just some quick updates on that. So here it says, former President Donald Trump has pled not guilty to 37 charges related to alleged mishandling of classified documents. Trump's lawyers asked for a jury trial during the former president's arraignment Tuesday at a federal courthouse in Miami. Quote, "We most certainly enter a plea of not guilty," end quote. Trump attorney Todd Blanche told the judge. During the hearing, Trump sat hunched over with his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. He did not speak. He's like a pouty child. It's just like, I got caught. It's like, bro, you took classified documents for no reason even. And they have him on video, or like a recording where he's like, oh, I can classify these documents. But he didn't. And he still took it. Yeah, man, he's a child. He really is. Like, okay, let's continue. So Trump's aide and co-defendant, Walt Nauta, was also arrested, fingerprinted, and processed. He had an initial appearance Tuesday, but will not be arraigned until June 27th. Here's what else happens at Tuesday's hearing, which ended after roughly 45 minutes. And then just some points here. So first so Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman ruled that Trump could not communicate with Nauta about the trial. The judge also told prosecutors to make a list of potential witnesses that Trump can't communicate with about the case, except through counsel. Secondly, the judge did not, however, place any travel restrictions on either defendant. Thirdly, the Justice Department recommended that both Trump and Nauta be released with no financial or special conditions. Prosecutor David Harback said that the government does not view either defendant as a flat risk, end quote. Fourthly, Goodman began the hearing thanking, quote, the entire law enforcement community for their work on Tuesday. Before the arraignment hearing, deputy marshals booked the former president and took electronic copies of his fingerprints. They did not take a mugshot of Trump since he is easily recognizable. The booking process took about 10 minutes. Man, yeah, it sucks. He got arraigned, he got indicted and booked twice, and they still haven't released a mugshot. It's just like, come on, man. Like, I want to see the fucking scowl. I want to see I want to see it. Come on, man. And it's also funny how like, oh, the government does not view the either defendant, meaning Trump and this assistant Nauta, yeah, we don't view him as a flight risk. And this guy literally like instigated a like white nationalist insurrection at the state, the capital, the federal capital building, where the vice president and all these senators were like literally inside. Not a flight risk, right? Oh, well, who knows, man. I don't know what's happening with anything right now. Like, I'm really like, I'm not even that like dedicated to this. Like, I'm just like, oh, look what's happening here. Like, I'm just like, I kind of don't care because I don't have any faith in our justice system to begin with. But it's just funny to see the comeuppance and, to see Trump get inconvenienced like this, and then also to see like I don't really follow any Trump people, but just to see like the reactions, because they're so petty and childish. They're like, oh, but Hillary and the emails, oh. But it's like, bro, like, okay, like, yeah, sure, fine. The Hillary emails, I don't give a shit about them, but yeah, I guess it is like a problem, like a security risk. But at the same time, it's like, bro, this guy, at least Hillary had like a server, right? That I'm sure has some firewall and like IT protections. So like, like it's a server, it's protected, at least they have their own like measures in place. But this was just literally like a bunch of crates, a bunch of like crates, and like really old like paper, file crates and boxes, and just like stacked in literally his fucking bathroom. Like, it's so funny. It is so hilarious. And I think they even had like a copier in one of those rooms. So it's just like, bro, like this is classified details, and it's like, I don't know, man. It's just so funny. And it's funny too, because like I'm pro like a whistleblower, kind of person. So like generally speaking, like I'm okay with leaked documents being like, out there. But, it's just funny that this is from the president, from Donald Trump. Like, what? It's just so funny to me. Oh my God, dude. It's just like, watching this unfold, especially considering how like when I was younger, when this guy got elected first time, like I was scared, like genuinely, I was fucking terrified. Like this is like 2016. I'm like 20 years old. I'm still pretty much a kid at that point. So I'm like, what? I'm scared, honestly. And still, like, I'm not saying that he isn't dangerous, because like, of course he is very dangerous, but still, it's just so funny, like, to just see this unfold. Like, I wish I could just go back in time and just be like, dude, like, look what happens to this guy. Like, this is so funny. Yeah, man. But hey, we just gotta savor this moment, at least, because, it's whatever, man. It's just so funny. And like, again, like this guy gets charged for the stupidest thing in the world, like all the fucking crimes. Like this guy is like the most obvious like con artist, like, a slumlord you can imagine, like literally like a Batman villain. And then he gets the presidency of the United States, and then his downfall is this like pretty like of all the things to get prosecuted for, and that's probably why they're sticking on it, because it's so easy and it's so obvious, and it's just like, this is downfall because he just couldn't help himself and took some documents and put some boxes in his bathroom, and this is going to be in the history books. This is going to be in the history books if he actually gets arrested, which I don't really know if that's going to happen, but I'm just curious to see what's going to happen with like because they're going to do like a Donald Trump library, presidential library. Like, I'm just curious what happens with that. Like that's something that I really think about. I'm like, dude, they're really going to do a Donald Trump presidential library, and like, what is that going to look like? It's so bad. Anyway, at least let me just continue a bit further. Just because I know I'm like making some jokes, but at least they're expanding on like just how serious these charges are. So let me just continue here. So before last week's federal indictment, Trump also faced criminal charges brought by New York City's local prosecutors for an alleged hush money scheme in the 2016 campaign, in which Trump is accused of falsifying business records, meaning the Stormy Daniels payoff. Right, and then the new charges in the DOJ documents case are drastically more serious and present the possibility of several years in prison if Trump is ultimately convicted. 31 counts that Trump faces are for willful retention of national defense information, a charge that does not turn on whether the documents are classified. In addition to the obstruction conspiracy, he also faces 4 counts related to the concealment of documents as well as a false statement charges. Quote, in a case like this, obstruction and tampering help prove the main charge that the defendant willfully engaged in the charged conduct. Quote, end quote, said David Aaron, a former federal prosecutor in espionage section of the DOJ's National Security Division and the current senior counsel at Perkins Coie. Quote, those facts could also affect how a judge, the jury, or the public views the case and could substantially affect sentencing. End quote. So they're bringing down the hammer for this, and rightfully so. I mean, they got to get him for something, and that's a pretty significant breach of. Yeah, it's just like it's it's stupid how this is unfolding and that he did this, but it's also just like. Because he could have very easily done it in a way that wouldn't have been caught, but again he's just so sloppy, and they got him, and he's gonna face some time, possibly very very real possibility of facing time, and he's already in his 70s, so let's say he gets 25 years, that's the rest of his life, so it's funny. I mean, it's funny for me, and of course there's some political unrest to be concerned about, but really at this point I don't think the Trump base is as activated as they were. I think they're moving on to say Ron DeSantis, even though Ron DeSantis really isn't that he's not as charismatic and as appealing to the Trump base as Donald Trump. But then again, I think after January 6th, that's the most we're going to see them mobilized and actually violent. I don't know, man. I mean, if anything, it might not be a mass movement. It would rather be isolated incidents, so I mean, again, we already have mass shootings and these terrorist attacks, because that's what they are, really. These mass shootings are terrorist attacks. So I feel it would be more like that. If there were violence or unrest, it would be more isolated. They say lone wolf, but it's really just terror activity. So maybe not a mass mobilization, but definitely very likely, isolated incidences, violent incidences. Yeah, man, it's who knows? It's just we're entering a very dangerous political climate, and we're now entering the new election cycle, which is going to be very serious indeed. I mean, we already see the lineup that's starting up. The Democrats, they're going to reelect Biden or renominate him. RFK Jr., he's starting to make some moves. I mean, who knows? I mean, for the Democrats and Republicans, I have no interest in it. I don't care. As I said, when it comes to elections, I vote legislators or county officials. But the presidency, I don't care. I really don't. But who knows? Well, we're just going to have to watch this unfold. And it's going to be a clusterfuck. It really is. I mean, we have a year from that. So we're just going to have to watch that unfold. At the least here, we do have some updates and considerations to be made politically. There have been some dealings, or at least when it comes to, say, the debt ceiling, which is not really something that I pay attention either. They have at least, they were getting very close to a default and a government shutdown. But now we're, they made a deal and they made a vote to raise the debt ceiling. But, it's just interesting as we're talking about the political climate and the political stability that we have. And, it's not as clear cut as it is, especially within the parties, because, the parties between each other, right? The Democrats, the Republicans, they have their own issues. But then you look internally within those parties as well, and they got their own issues going on. The Democrats, I would say internally, although they don't always, I mean, they're pretty incompetent when it comes to governing, but at the least they're on the same page. They're on the same page on their incompetence and their inaction, if that makes sense. But when it comes to the conservatives, they're all over the place. The Republicans, they're all over the place. There's like a split, of course, because you have like this MAGA crowd that's like radicalized, and they're just like off the walls, fucking Hitler particles. Like they're gone. Okay, they're gone. But then you have the more moderate conservatives that are trying to, I guess, hold us together because they know that the radical, like crazy, hysterical, white pride, like nationalist section of the party, that's not appealing. And they understand that. They're trying to make it more appealing. But of course, the more they try to, I guess, moderate the party, the less appealing they are for their base, who is like rabid and like they're, genocidal. I mean, look, man, like there are people in this country that are ready for genocide, and they are primarily in the Republican Party. Like that's their base. So I mean, it's no surprise, man. Like these people are Nazis, but hey, we have to be more open-minded, right? So, it's just interesting to see these shakeups happening, between our political parties and then within those political parties. And it can be certainly more observed, at least with this debt ceiling vote, because the Republicans, they were the ones who were mainly dragging their feet on this, and primarily because of this divide between like the moderates and the radicals, the radical conservatives. So I want to at least talk about that here from the AP, just about this debt ceiling vote and the divides and the unrest that is happening within the party, the Republican Party, and how that reflects like what's coming for the upcoming election political cycles and just down the line, because we're seeing like this radicalization occur, and it's only going to escalate. It's going to continue. It's yeah, I mean it's concerning. It's dangerous, but this is the start of it. And yeah, so here with the AP, so on this debt ceiling vote, House conservatives staged a mini revolt Tuesday in retaliation for Speaker Kevin McCarthy's leadership on last week's vote to raise the debt ceiling. The right wing banding together to block progress on a mixture of bills and vent their frustration. Led by outspoken members of the House Freedom Caucus, a group of 11 Republicans broke with their party on an otherwise routine procedural vote that threw the day's schedule and the rest of the week into disarray. It's the first such procedural rule vote to fail in nearly 2 decades. The group is among some of the same conservative Republicans who tried to stop the debt ceiling bill from advancing last week and who then threatened to try to oust McCarthy after passage of the debt ceiling package that President Joe Biden signed into law. Short of taking that step, they have demanded a meeting with McCarthy, leaving it unclear how the standoff will be resolved. Quote, "We're frustrated with the way this place is operating," end quote, said Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida, Republican representative of Florida, one of the more outspoken members of the group. Quote, "We're not going to live in the era of the imperial speaker anymore," end quote. At issue is not just the gas stove bill and others that are now stalled as the conservatives wage their protests, but the political standing of the House Republican majority. It is just a one-day spat that allows members to make a point or a more lasting fracture. McCarthy, or Speaker McCarthy from California, Republican, is working with just a 4-seat majority, which gives a small block of lawmakers considerable power to gain concessions from him. Quote, "We're trying to resolve internal tensions within the House Republicans, and from time to time you have to have an airing within your family, and I think that's part of what happened today," end quote, said Representative Patrick McHenry, a Republican from North Carolina. Just hours earlier, Republican leaders were extolling how the House Republicans had learned to work together as a team after the rocky start of the year in the spectacle of McCarthy's protracted election to become Speaker. Quote, "In sports, it's called a game plan," said Representative Tom Emmer from Minnesota, Republican, the top GOP vote counter and a former hockey coach. Quote, "The debt limit last week displayed just how far House Republicans have come as a team," end quote. What led the conservatives to revolt Tuesday is not fully clear. They outlined a list of grievances over McCarthy's leadership in handling the debt ceiling package. The House approved the package in an overwhelming bipartisan vote last week, despite objections from the conservative, sending it to the Senate, where it also passed with an overwhelming vote. Biden signed it into law on Saturday. So they're upset. They passed this bill, or the debt ceiling. So the House representatives the conservatives are just making a fuss about it. Like they're just obstructing, as I said, like the procedural votes, like just like all these like mini things that like should just go without a hitch. They're obstructing it because they're upset, and they're just pouting, and as I said also with McCarthy's like vote to the speaker position, I think it took like 15 days. Like they just delayed it for 15 days, which is not something that happened before. I mean they're really pushing it. They really are. And I mean, as I said, it comes from Matt Gaetz, who's again among like the more radical, rabid Republican representatives out here. But let me just see if there's anything else in line. And one issue as well, apart from this debt ceiling vote, there's another angle as well. They say one issue that has frustrated conservatives in particular is an upcoming vote to reverse a Biden administration firearms related regulation on so-called pistol braces, a stabilizing feature championed by some of the members of the Freedom Caucus. Some conservatives said House GOP leaders delayed consideration of the bill after members voted against last week's debt package. So there's guns. There's they also mentioned the gas stove ban. So there's a whole slew of issues, and these are rapid. Again, this is from like the radical conservative. They call it the Freedom Caucus. It's just so funny how like anything related to American politics, that like when the word freedom is involved in that, you just already know that this is like super racist. Like it's like the very opposite of freedom. It's just so funny. It's just Anyway, so that is what's in place for these Republicans, and they're just obstructing things and making everybody stay in the Senate, the House. They're just making everybody stay worse, because they're just trying to delay the process. They're trying to throw a wrench into the gears. So they're just trying to be as hard-headed as possible and trying to at least get people to talk to them, so that way they can get along and they can work. So who knows? But that's at least what's happening with our legislator. And it's always going to be a mess. And this is always just going to be the trend with our political system, where they're just going to throw something in there to try to slow things down, try to drag out the process. As I said, like this one like procedural like vote obstruction that they did, it like ruined the whole week. And that's part of their plan. They're saboteurs. That's what they are. They just sabotage the process. Oh well, I mean, this is what I mean when I say you can't engage with conservatives in good faith, because they don't operate in good faith. They're gonna obstruct, and they're gonna scheme and just meddle the way that they want to, just to win. That's all they care about, winning. So that's at least there. But at least we're talking about the political system in Washington D.C. Just the federal system there. And then I wanted to at least talk about some developments within Texas. Since I'm a Texas resident, just some developments that have been happening here. And in particular, it concerns the state attorney general by the name of Ken Paxton, which, if you understand Texas politics and who Ken Paxton is, he is a very notorious figure. I mean, he's like the how do I say this? He's like, because the governor's Greg Abbott, so he's like Greg Abbott's attack dog, and they're so bad, dude. It's just so crazy to me, like how obviously evil our politicians are, especially in the South. Like they're so evil. They're obviously like racist, like white supremacist Confederates, fucking Nazis, and like they win like without like any, like they just win. They just put their name on the ballot and then just landslide. It's just crazy. But of course, they get elected pretty consistently, and with Ken Paxton, he has pretty strong support. But now, the Attorney General, he's getting indicted, or he's getting impeached, which is like the first time that's ever happened in state history. And like even within his own local area, because he's from Collin County, which is like a suburb in like the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Even there in Collin County, where he's had plenty of power and support, even he's starting to lose that. So this is it's pretty serious, and he's getting impeached, and then I think also there's some like wire fraud charges that are being pressed against him. So like this guy's going down. Like it's pretty serious. Which I don't care. I'm glad because he's a terrible attorney general. So it's nice to see his downfall, especially like within his own political system. So because this guy has a lot of power and a lot of control. So the fact that he's getting impeached means that these are very serious charges and very credible charges. So here I'm just reading from the Texas Tribune just on this impeachment of the attorney general. So reading here. When the Texas House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to impeach Attorney General Ken Paxton in the waning days of a regular legislative session, some Texans were shocked that the 121 yes votes included every representative from Collin County, where voters and local leaders have long rallied behind the now suspended official's vocal brand of conservatism. So as I said, in his county, Collin County, it was a unanimous vote. And again, this is where he's had power and control for some time now, and they're turning against him because that's how serious this is. So this is, I'm glad. I'm glad. I always love seeing conservative politicians downfall. Like this is just funny to see, but I just want this to happen to Greg Abbott. I want this to happen to Ted Cruz. Like I want it to happen to all of them. Like I just want them gone. But anyway, so here, as they're talking about Paxton and his control in Collin County. So the booming, largely suburban county north of Dallas has been Paxton's base of power as he climbed the state's political ranks from his first race for the Texas House to becoming the state's top lawyer. And while changing demographics and some erosion of Republican voting power there have coincided with allegations and scandals that piled up for Paxton, Collin County has still swung for him election after election. But a unanimous vote to impeach Paxton by the 5 Republican representatives from Collin County, and those representatives are Frederick Frazier of McKinney, Jeff Leach of Plano, Matt Shaheen of Plano, Justin Holland of Rockwall, and Candy Noble of Lucas, exposed a statewide rift within the GOP that's apparently also playing out in Paxton's backyard. Quote, "It has been true that Paxton had the support of Collin County, but that support has been decreasing over the years, and when the crunch came, it was simply no longer there," said Cal Jensen, a political science professor at Southern Methodist University who lives in Collin County. A Texas Attorney General has never been impeached. For years, though, a laundry list of accusations against Paxton has grown. He's been under criminal indictment for the vast majority of his tenure in statewide office. The allegations, detailed in 20 articles of impeachment, accuse him of abusing the powers of his office and firing staff members who reported his alleged misconduct. In a joint statement after the historic House impeachment vote, the Collin County Legislative Delegation noted Paxton's established political credentials, but also stood by their decision to impeach and suspend one of their own. Quote, "This was an incredibly difficult vote as, for most of us, Ken has been a longtime friend," they said, quote, "and without question, Ken has been an aggressive and effective warrior defending Texans against federal overreach. Because of that, this was a vote we wish we didn't have to make and a vote we do not take lightly." Paxton, who lives in McKinney with his wife, Republican State Senator Angela Paxton, couldn't be reached for comment. The next step in his impeachment is a trial before the state Senate with his wife as a potential juror. The Senate hasn't set a date for those proceedings, but they will occur before August 28th, according to a resolution that senators recently adopted. This is very serious, charges. Again, they're talking about misconduct. I think they even mentioned about a possible affair with like an intern, and there was even another like Texas, I forget if there was a senator or a representative who had been voted. He got ejected because of allegations of misconduct with an intern. So yeah, man, this is it's a pretty serious charge, and it's a political scandal, like a really serious political scandal, and and it's funny too, like he's losing support even within his local area, unanimous. So like they've known about this for some time. Like it's so funny when you think about local politics and like the kind of corruption and dealings that go on with that. So you know, like people know, like they've known for a while. So it's not like it's this stuff is hidden. So the fact that they're coming out against this now is because the evidence is overwhelming and like it's just irrefutable. And I guess he doesn't have that much control as before. They don't fear him as much as they used to, I guess. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, like luckily, like now I'm thinking about like local politics and like the underworld, the underground sort of dealings that happen. Kind of makes me want to write like a crime novel, like especially in Houston. Like, I don't know why. Like, I need to read more about like crime dramas, but like Houston would be a very good setting for a crime drama, especially with like politics and you can include the police, again the attorney general's office. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but it's just like in a place like this, and then they're talking about he's been gaining support. I think he's been like really like a political activist, or he's been politically active for at least maybe 30 years, 3 decades. So he's had control. So yeah, this is his downfall, and they're turning against him because they know exactly what he's about, and they're now making a stand to stand against it. But yeah, so that's the impeachment, and of course they're going to do a trial. So they said before the 28th of August. So that'll be interesting to see what happens, and hopefully he gets kicked out. I mean, we'll see. And they said his wife was going to be a juror because she's a state senator. So I don't know if she'll recuse herself, but yeah, this is all just very interesting. Again, unprecedented. And this is the impeachment, but then he's also getting formally charged for some wire fraud. So like that's a whole different process. So yeah, he'll get impeached, possibly ejected, and then he's still under investigation. I think from like the SEC. Like, yeah, man, they're bringing the hammer down. They really are. And of course, they were talking about like, oh, he's been a champion for federal overreach. It's like, well, yeah, now you're gonna deal with the SEC. There you go. That's some overreach for you. Yeah. Anyway, so that is Texas, or at least the political developments in Texas. Now, I at least also wanted to talk about, this is Texas related, but some other developments, and this is more of like a local issue in my area, which like I just learned about like this morning, and like this is like honestly freaky, like just to learn about what happened here, and this is like very close to where I live. Very close, actually. Let me see what this because I just see an address. So, but what happened at least here is that there was a arson attack that occurred in the area in Huntsville, which is where I live, and this is at least just reading from some reports. I mean, this is like literally like 6 miles away from where I live. So there was an arson attack that occurred, which was linked to an earlier dispute, like a homeowners association dispute concerning short-term rentals, I believe like Airbnbs. And there was a dispute between this homeowner who was black, and he made concerns and notes and basically against the short-term rentals, and then they voted to ban that. And because of that dispute, this homeowner, because they had a rental property, they started getting vandalism and racist attacks and graffitis on it. And even at one point, he said that he was like sitting in his room, and then somebody shut out his window. So yeah, this is like racially motivated, because I mean this homeowner is black, but then also just like I'm guessing like landlord dispute, because I mean like landlords are fucked up. Like this isn't like, even if this wasn't racially involved, like just the short-term rental dispute in general, like that's totally within like a landlord's behavior, like a slumlord, corrupt slumlord. But anyway, so here we have this Huntsville attack where he was, this homeowner was getting vandalism, spray paint on his house. They were saying, "Oh, we don't like your kind here." And then, just like a week ago, at least this week, that house was burned. There was an arson attack, and then there was also found that there were people inside, so people died. So, yeah, like this is serious. This is terrorism. That's what it is here. Now we can speculate whether this is racially involved. I mean, I certainly believe that because they literally say we don't like your kind, meaning black people. A black homeowner getting spray painted. We don't like your kind. Yeah, real mystery as the motivations, right? But then also like there's added on like dispute, like rental dispute, which is I guess business related. Again, like landlords are fucking evil, man. Which I mean, this guy's also a landlord because he has a rental property. But yeah, it's whatever, man. But still, it's fucked up that this attack happened and then people died. So I mean, this is a lynching. That's what it is. It's a lynching. I mean, this is like right up their alley. The graffiti, shooting out their windows, literally burning down the house, killing people. So yeah, I'm just reading here from local news here. And again, this is Huntsville, Texas. So this is my area. This is my fucking backyard, man. So this shit's serious out here. So here, 2 bodies were found dead after a fire burnt down a home in Huntsville early Saturday morning. That same home was the target of a racist attack just last month. According to the homeowner, CAIR, or CAIR, so I don't know if I'm saying that right, Houston and the ADL Southwest are now calling for the FBI to investigate the incident as a hate crime. The fire broke out at around 2:30 a.m. Saturday on the 23,000 block of Piney Point Road in Huntsville, and that's like literally like less than 6 miles away from where I'm at. So again, like literally my backyard. And 2 people were found dead, but the homeowner, Mario Robertson, said his home in the Waterwood neighborhood was not being rented out at the time. Oh. So it wasn't being rented out. I mean, it's a rental property, but the people inside, I guess, probably weren't the rental people, because that's what I thought at first. That's interesting. So probably what happened, this is my speculation, because I read some other reports saying that they had a witness saying that somebody was still on fire, like running from the scene of the crime. So what I think what happened, and these fucking white supremacist idiots, like, of course they would set themselves on fire. So I think what happened was there was 3 guys that went in to burn the place down, and then they ignited it while they were still inside. And I'm guessing the fumes or whatever gasoline that they had sprayed on themselves caught on fire. And then one of the guys managed to escape, but the other 2 died. So anyway, so I thought at first the 2 had died. They were like residents. So that's why at first I said it was a lynching. But still, like even if these 2 individuals might have been like the attackers, it's still like lynch adjacent, right? Like they're trying to target a black homeowner, like if he were inside, like they would certainly have burned him alive. So anyway, so that's at least, that little update on the story. But yeah, here, let me just repeat that again. So yeah, 2 people were found dead, but the homeowner, Mario Robertson, said his home in the Waterwood neighborhood was not being rented out at the time. Neither victim has been publicly identified. Quote, Mr. Robertson would like to thank the community for their prayers and support. He is working with authorities to resolve this and get some answers to the questions he has regarding his home being burnt down, said Lana Turner, a representative of Robertson. Providing only a statement through his representative, Lana Turner, Robertson cited concerns for his safety. So that same home that caught fire was also previously targeted with racist graffiti last month. The spray-painted message said, "We don't like your kind." And this is a quote from Robertson, or at least from the associate, So some graffiti, which is racist graffiti, was left on his home. And from that, we have a lot of concerns over the possibility that this is a targeted arson attack with hate-filled motives, said William White, the director of CAIR Houston, a civil rights organization. Roberson said in a separate incident 2 weeks later, he was nearly shot while in another home in the same neighborhood. Roberson said the bullet barely missed him. Okay, so he was shot, but not in that home that burned, rather a different home. So, I mean, they're targeting him. I mean, this is some real Jim Crow fucking terrorism here, dude. Like, for real, man. And all this over, like, Airbnb dispute. This is so fucking crazy. So, right, yeah, as well, the homeowner said in a recent interview that his window was shot out, so very concerning signs that this is a possibility, a hate-filled motive behind this arson, and it's left 2 people dead, White said. Okay, so yeah, man, that's kind of crazy that this is happening out here. I mean, this is real, like, clan country out here, bro. Like, for real, man. Like, that's the thing that, like, still, like, it's so fascinating to me how, like, whenever this topic of, like, racism and, like, literally, like, the Ku Klux Klan and the history of the state, like, some people are still, like, they don't think about this stuff. I mean, like, bro, like, a lot of these people out here, they most definitely have Klan, like, robes and shit in their attic from their grandpa. Like, without a doubt, dude. Okay? In the fucking 20s and 40s, like from the Great Depression era, because, you know, the Klan, they had, like, different waves and different movements. So the second Klan movement, which was in, like, the 20s up until, like, the 30s and 40s, they had, like, millions of members. Millions, man. They were fucking marching in Washington, D.C. They had a huge rally, okay? So, yeah, man, it's not a surprise that, like, there's a lot of people out here with those sentiments and those sympathies. I mean, shit, there's a fucking Confederate memorial in, like, the town square in this fucking town, dude. I mean, granted, it's like a little plaque, so it's not too big. You know, it's not too celebratory. It's like a little stone plaque. But still, man, it's like it's still that celebration and that victimization. You know, like, oh, here's to remember the sacrifice of the Confederate sons. And it's like, bro, like, you know, it's like, why don't you take, like, a message, like a proletariat message of, like, these were farmers, poor farmers who were tricked into this war because these plantation lords wanted to keep their slaves and they wanted to keep their power and control. They wanted to keep their land. Like, that was the real problem. And that's the real sacrifice that those Confederate people, the sons of the Confederacy, they were tricked by these plantation lords. But instead, you take it out on the carpetbaggers, you know, the Northern Unionists. Oh, it's just like, oh my goodness. This is what I mean, man. And again, it's just crazy that I live here because, like, Texas is not my home. This is just some place that I'm stuck at. So it's just like, it's just kind of crazy to me how, like, some people still don't fully understand the history of the state. And again, like, I studied the state history quite a bit. So, like, I'm not just talking about this, like, oh, because I'm just a grumpy person. No, I got uprooted. Like, no, like, the history of the state is very violent. It's objectively racist and white supremacist. Just objectively, it is. Now, there are other aspects of Texas history which I like a lot. And those are the aspects that I want to, of course, celebrate. But it's you can't ignore this. You can't ignore this Confederate white supremacist past and heritage, which is still very much alive. So, anyway. And again, as we're seeing here, like, this racist violence still continues. And, you know, at least in this case, because, like, they say supposedly that the people who died, I mean, they weren't, like, the rental residents. Chances are, and this is my speculation, that those people who had died were the actual attackers. And then, like, at least 2 of them just burned to death. Which, I mean, it's kind of funny because, I mean, what can you expect from racist morons, right? Like, come on. Anyway, I mean, that's like something you would write in, like, a movie, right? Like, we're gonna burn down this house, Cletus. Okay, let's do it, Bobby. And then just burn them up. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So at least we spoke on that. So just some developments here, but I also wanted to talk about just some other issues that are happening, at least, you know, just related to, like, infrastructure issues that, you know, that I've talked about, at least, and, you know, just wanted to get more dedicated on it. So primarily wanted to talk about the East Palestine sort of chemical disaster that occurred, the derailment of the train, the Norfolk Southern train that derailed, which then they I don't even know what they did. I mean, it's pretty obvious that what they did to clean it up was not the proper procedure. They just did that to quickly cover up and just to get just to clean up the mess. But then they ended up creating a greater disaster. Yeah, man. Because again, I've read some railroad specialists and analysts, and they said that this is not how you do it. This is not how you clean up a chemical disaster. You don't just burn all the chemicals and have it enter the atmosphere and the water, because it's just not the proper way. I don't know how they're supposed to do it. I think they're really supposed to I think from my understanding is that you're supposed to spray it with water to keep it from igniting, keep it cool. But they just wanted to burn it up and just to get it cleaned up. Anyway, this is really a disaster, and this is just one of those moments that this should have been headline news all over the country. And again, you will not hear anybody talking about this. If I started talking about this, people will be "What the fuck are you talking about?" They don't know about this. And this is easily one of the greatest industrial disasters of the century. Really, this is seriously horrible what happened. And, of course, now they're going to start bringing class action lawsuits. And, of course, this is a $1 billion corporation that they're never going to take accountability for this. And, it's just a mess. These people are fucking evil, man. This is what I mean about corporations. They're fucking evil. Even when they cut corners knowing that they are cutting safety regulations, they're cutting budgets, and then there's a disaster that happens precisely because they did all these cutbacks. The brake systems are super old. They're not up to measure. Our railroads are already messed up. We've decommissioned thousands of miles of railroad, and then the ones that are still active, plenty of them are still under repaired. And of course, in this instance, as we saw, the braking systems, they just fail, and there's just a derailment after derailment after derailment. And then we see something like this happen, where there's a disaster with hazardous chemicals, and then they do a terrible job fixing it. And then now, of course, they're going to infect and get people sick in the local area. Of course, this is a town this little area. It's the Midwest, or it's these rural areas. So it's not that, I guess, people don't really care about this, the rural areas, the states, the Ohio, Pennsylvania, I don't know, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the Ohio, Pennsylvania, small town America, that portion of the country, nobody cares about. So it's just fuck it, whatever. Yeah, we'll just Chernobyl this area and just chemical attack them. I just think about stuff like this. If this had happened in a place like Houston, which there's a lot of chemical plants there, and even after the wake of this, there were a couple, there was a train derailment in Houston. I think even a chemical plant, there was a recent fire. So it's bro, man, something like this is definitely going to happen, where there's going to be a chemical incident that's going to cause this cloud of chemicals. And oh my god, I just can't even think about it. Again, this is so fucked up, and again, people are just fuck it, this is just it. So anyway, so at least just reading from Reuters about this class action lawsuits that are happening in Norfolk Southern, which already has a notorious history of train accidents and these sort of disasters. They're just trying to weasel their way out of it. So at least just reading from Reuters on what's happening. So Norfolk Southern Corp has asked a U.S. judge to toss a proposed class action lawsuit it is facing over a February train derailment that led to a toxic chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio, arguing the claims are threadbare and barred by federal law. So again, like, this is just so crazy how, like, they're just like, no, this doesn't apply to us, when it very easily, like, very obviously, like, it's like, again, there's no accountability. There's no accountability. There's no self-reflection. They do not care. They only want the wealth and power. That's it. So yeah, these claims are threadbare, and technically by federal law, we did nothing wrong. It's just like, because they already changed the laws, so it's just, oh my god. Anyway, so the railroad company told a federal court in Youngstown, Ohio, that the consolidated complaint filed last month on behalf of roughly 500,000 area residents, businesses, and property owners relies on, quote, vague and conclusory allegations that it acted in property leading to the crash. The company said it is required as a common carrier under U.S. law to transport hazardous materials like those that spilled and caught fire, including vinyl chloride. It said the plaintiff's negligence, nuisance, and strict liability claims are preempted by federal laws like the Hazardous Materials Transportation Act and the Federal Railroad Safety Act. Those laws expansively regulate railroad operations and bar those sort of claims based in state law, Norfolk said. Jane Conroy, an attorney representing the plaintiffs with the law firm Simmons Hanley Conroy, on Monday called the motion to dismiss routine and said, quote, we have every expectation that the motion will be denied in its entirety. The plaintiffs have claimed that the company is liable for the property damage, health concerns, and business impacts caused by the February 3rd crash of the Norfolk-operated train. Yeah, so, yeah, they basically chemical bombed this town. I mean, they're going to have health issues for decades. Like, this is going to be so bad, dude. It's just so crazy how this keeps happening, where there's an industrial disaster, a pretty easily preventable industrial disaster, to be honest. And even with that accident, the cleanup itself, like, they could have done far less damage control than that. They burned it because it was the quickest way to be done, the cheapest way, and fuck it. And they're doing this. This is cheaper. That's the reason why they do all this shit. Okay, because this whole class action, like, problems and issues, like, this is cheaper than actually having the regulations. That's why they do it. And this is why they're fucking evil. This is so fucked up. And this is just the way it is. Fuck the environment, fuck people's health, because we need money. And yeah, that's the only reason. It's just, oh my god, dude. This is so fucking, what an evil country that we live in. Wow, man. It's just like, it's ridiculous, man. The things that people will do for money, man. It's frightening. Okay? Like, families rip each other apart over inheritance, which is like something that I'm very likely going to experience in my lifetime, like inheritance problems, because people are greedy. But dude, like if that can be done between people like who are related to each other, imagine what like a multi-billion-dollar company that has no concern for the well-being of regular Americans, especially those living in the forgotten areas of the Pennsylvania or Ohio, those rural small town areas. Like, they don't give a fuck. They don't care at all. And it's fucking crazy. And then the president didn't do anything. Like, the president has not made a comment on this at all. Even when this disaster was unfolding, there's some passing comments they made, but no emergency whatsoever. No, we're monitoring the situation carefully. We're going to issue health alerts, or even within the Ohio government, the Ohio state government. And it's fucking crazy too, because you would see some of these senators and representatives, they would go to Ohio and they'd be like, look at what's happened, look at the fish in the water, they're dead, where's the government? And it's you're the fucking government, dude. Where's the government? Bro, you are. Declare the emergency. It's oh my god, what a fucking country, man. And this is why we're losing. This is why we're gonna fucking just drop dead, because it's ridiculous what's happening. And as we know, I was talking about, because this is more like an infrastructure concern. Our railways, our train system,
It's just so underdeveloped, dude. And already just like actively imploding. And it's because of these corporations, these cost cutting measures that they have to do, because they're only interested in quarterly growth, and that quarterly growth has to continue forever, no matter what. No matter what happens, cut the safety regulations, cut the health benefits. You had the railroad workers, their sick days, cut their sick days, their vacation pay, is the paternity leave, like all of these things. Like everybody else has to experience these losses. Everybody except the bosses, everybody except these executives, everybody else has to experience these losses. But us normal people, like, it's just ridiculous. And this is just justified. This is just the way things are. And again, man, like, again, like, when I have like a conversation with somebody who like supports this sort of system, I always try to like have this like emotional appeal, or this like ethical appeal, try to like appeal to their humanity. Like, hey, like, don't you think this is messed up, where a system where capital and like finance is like, that's more valuable than human lives, our health, the health of the ecosystem. But at this point I've realized, like, that's not an argument that works with them, because they don't care. They only want the wealth and power, because these people are morally bankrupt. They really are. They're morally and ethically bankrupt. They have no soul. Like, they don't care about the well-being of others, of anybody but themselves, because they only care about, what am I going to get out of it? I mean, these are the people who'd throw their own children under the bus if they can get an extra buck. Like, this is who they are. Like, now that we're talking about like greed and this sort of like disassociation, this dehumanization. Like, I had recently just watched Succession, and I finally watched it after the show had ended, because like I knew I was going to get sucked into it, so I wanted to wait for all the episodes to be out, because I just wanted to watch it straight. So like last week I pretty much just binged it, and it's a great show. It really is. Like, when critics call it Shakespearean, that's not an exaggeration. Like, it truly is a Shakespearean like drama. And it also helps that it's very funny. So like, that's like, I'm not really into like big corporate drama shows, but like Succession works because it's hilarious. And I think even like Will Ferrell is like a producer on the show. So like, there's some real comedic actors and writers involved with this. But then like, there's those funny moments involved, but then there's also those really hard-hitting dramatic scenes that like are like really like exceptional, like writing and directing and acting from everybody. Like, this is truly one of the greatest shows ever made. And I'm not saying that to exaggerate. And anyway, what I meant to say about this, because ultimately it's a corporate drama, it's a family drama about wealth and greed, because I mean, these are like billionaires, media moguls. So this is what that show is about ultimately: wealth and greed, and what people are willing to do. Again, even like family members, there's the siblings, the Roy siblings, the Logan Roy, the father. Like, this is a completely broken, emotionally broken family and household, where like it's just crazy to me. And it's just crazy to me when you see moments where like they're being nasty with each other, and then you have to really think, like, there are really people who live like this, who talk to their family like this, who like scheme and meddle like this, and they just like, there's no point in being fair, because it's all about me. I have to win, and I have to have the largest cut of the pie. It's, wow, man. And that's what makes it so good, because like, it's so good because it's so real, because there are people like this for real. And again, like, this is like the upper class, the 1%, the billionaire owners of this country. But then you have to think, like, there are people who are like, who don't even have that wealth and power. Like, they're just regular like middle class families, and they still act the same way, with that same drive and ambition, and that drive to dominate, which is like crazy. It's just so crazy to me how you have somebody who has this like attitude, who like, if they were given like billions of dollars, like, they would be a truly dangerous person. But because they're just a normal Joe Schmo, and they have to work a regular 9 to 5, like they're just stuck with that powerlessness. So they have that ambition, and at any time, any opportunity, when they finally have power over like the smallest person, they will exercise that authority to the fullest extent that they can. And that's really scary that there are people like that. It's just wow. Like, and I'm getting kind of ahead of myself thinking about power and like the wealth and greed, but it's just like the pathological like just the pathology of it, of the greed and the dehumanization and just the will to dominate over others. It's perfectly encapsulated in these corporations who don't care at all, and these executives do not give a shit. And the reason why they're willing to deal with these class action lawsuits, these litigations and such, is because it's cheaper. It's cheaper than the regulations. It's cheaper than making sure that the infrastructure is secure, that the braking systems, right, they're secure. It's just ridiculous, man. And even then, even with all these like cuts towards regulations, they're still gonna lay off folks. They're still gonna cut benefits and cut the vacation pay, sick days. Like, I don't know, man. What an evil country, man. Wow. Anyway, I need to move on. So to continue here, because we're talking about some infrastructure problems, and I was talking about the railroad system. But then there's also been another development, and this is more concerning, like the freeways, the interstate highways. And so there was a recent accident, or the recent incident that occurred in Philadelphia with Interstate 95, and this is like one of the most important interstates in the country, because this is like the Eastern Seaboard, so those. It's like if you really look at the Eastern Seaboard, it's like one big metro area. Especially like Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York. Like that's a whole tri-state area. Like that's like a whole metro region, which is huge. It's unbelievable actually, like how heavily populated and densely packed the East Coast is. Because like it's like easily more than 50% of the country lives east of the Mississippi. So yeah, it's heavily industrialized and heavily developed. And so when you have a road like this, the Interstate 95 out of service, and of course, with our transportation system, the interstates are like the main mode for like continental travel, So this is going to be disruptive, and we don't have much options when it comes to public transportation. Again, we were just talking about the railroads. And most of that railroad is for commerce. So, so this is a pretty significant development. And again, like this just highlights just how fragile our infrastructure is. Now, of course, I think with this like specific section of I-95, I think they had done earlier developments on it, so it wasn't like it was completely out of service. But yeah, in this specific circumstances, I think what happened, or at least what I'll expand on later, there was those gas tank 18-wheel vehicles supposedly had crashed and caused an explosion, which then caused the collapse. So again, it wasn't really like, it just collapsed randomly because it's under repaired, but rather a truck crashed and exploded. So again, it's not necessarily like a maintenance issue, but again, it's not to take away from the fact that there are a lot of roads and bridges that are under repaired and are pretty close to collapse, just like at any second. So at least here, just to talk from CNN on this I-95 collapse. So here, as they're reporting, a body has been recovered from among the wreckage of Sunday's Interstate 95 collapse in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania State Police told CNN on Monday afternoon. The body was turned over to the Philadelphia County Medical Examiner. Quote, authorities are in the process of identifying the remains, Pennsylvania State Police spokesperson Miles Snyder said. Authorities did not provide any additional information. The inferno began after the tanker driver took an off-ramp and crashed into a wall while trying to go around a curve around 6:20 a.m. Sunday. State officials said Monday a stretch of northbound I-95 fell on the truck, authorities said. The truck landed on its side and the crash into the wall ignited the fire. Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Secretary Mike Carroll said Monday the truck was carrying 8,500 gallons, so 8,500 gallons of gasoline. Pennsylvania State Police said officials will not launch a criminal investigation into the collapse. The Pennsylvania State Police said Monday the company that owns the truck has been in contact with officials and is complying with state policy, or state police. Officials said state police would not identify the company. Authorities have not identified the driver. There's a governor declaration. So Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro issued a disaster declaration Monday, which allows the state to dip into federal funds and cut red tape to expedite repairs. The roadway is one of the busiest interstates in the regions, typically carrying about 160,000 vehicles through Philadelphia daily. So it's a very significant, very important roadway, and again, like, it's not even that big of a, like, because it's like a bridge, so like, it's like an overpass, and it's not even that like big of a section, but just this little portion of it, and it's like both sides too, because like one side of it, of course, is completely collapsed, but then the second side has some damage to it where there's like a dip, and I even saw like one video of like some guys like recording it, and they're like, and of course, like, this is from Philly, so like, whoa, what the fuck is happening here? And then you see like they drive right by it, and then their section of the road, which is like partially damaged, it's like a very, like, they took a big dip, like that's how significant the damage is. So like, yeah, so like both sections are decommissioned and they're going to have to repair, and it's just, I'm just curious how long it's going to take to finally get that repair in, because I mean, as we're talking about, our infrastructure is in decline. So like, even if they did repair it, it was going to take it could take months. It really could. And then even when it's fully repaired, like, who knows if it's going to be like back to its normal status. So okay. So anyway, just to continue at least a little further. So here, investigators are monitoring the emergency response as crews sift through rubble to get to the tanker truck. A focus of the investigation, said Jennifer Homendy, the National Transportation Safety Board chair. And massive chunks of the fallen overpass are now being demolished. Authorities said Monday, quote, demolition of the collapsed bridges has begun and detours are in place. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation said a more exact timeline for the complete rebuilding of the I-95 roadway should be available in the coming days once the engineers complete the review. Demolition should take 4 or 5 days, officials said, but the damage to the part of the East Coast primary highway could take months to repair. While crews work around the clock to clean up the debris, federal investigators are probing the tanker truck fire that led to the collapse. So, yeah, at least that's the collapse of the overpass, and they're starting to make the repairs to, as I said, it could take months. So, like, this is a significant roadway, and again, most people use that section of road. So they're gonna have all these different detours, and like they're gonna have to go on the service roads, and I mean, this is gonna be a mess, because that's just like how poorly designed our roadways are. Or like, you have one major highway out of commission, and now everybody has to get off these off ramps, and they have to go on these regular streets, and then that's gonna get all backed up, and yeah, man, this is just a mess. And this is, and again, I live in a place like, Houston, or near Houston, where it's a very similar situation where all these interstates and these freeways, they're the most dependent mode of transportation. But yeah, anytime there's like an accident that takes up, and I mean, like, some of these accidents are huge, like they take up like multiple lanes, and then like everybody gets down to like one single lane. It's like, it just ruins everything, and it just ruins the traffic. Like, yeah, man, like, it's crazy. That's why I don't like living there, because it's just like anytime you want to do something, like say you want to go downtown for the night, which like I don't even like going out and clubbing and shit like that, but anytime you have to do it, like it's so dangerous, and then you have to drive like literally like an hour just to get downtown, and you have to find parking, and then like you're just like kind of stuck there, and you can't even really walk. Like even when you're in downtown, it's like you're only really like stuck in your local area, like the immediate blocks. But say you want to go to one port, like you're in one part of town, and then you want to go to a different portion of it, like there's really no way. There's no like metro system. I mean, there's some buses you can take, but still, even that is like not that reliable. There's no like, yeah, there's no metro system. There's no like, subway. Okay, they have a metro system, but even that is like, it's like immediately like relegated to like, I think that third ward region and like the medical center. Like that's really all that metro system has. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I mean, that's why I don't go into Houston, because it's like you have to literally drive everywhere, and driving is such a pain in the ass. Like it really is. It's really stressful, and especially late at night, because everybody's out clubbing and they're fucking speeding and shit, and it's just not a fun time. I just don't like it. Again, people are like, "Oh man, let's have some fun," and it's like, but I'm not having fun. Like I am having a panic attack. So yeah, it's just not for me, man. I'm sorry. Anyway, so that's at least we're talking about some infrastructure issues. Of course, this country is always going to have infrastructure problems. It's just the way things are. The chips are falling where they are. So yeah, we're going to have these problems. Of course, these class action lawsuits. At least in the instance of that, like Philadelphia I-95 collapse, like that seems to have been purely an accident. Again, as they said, like, the truck driver hit the wall and they turned over. So that's not necessarily, negligence in that sense, because accidents do happen. But yeah, at least with the Norfolk Southern, the East Palestine chemical disaster, that was far more preventable, and they should be held to they should be culpable for millions of dollars of damages, because they really fucked up there and they poisoned that community. But anyway, at least we'll continue. So here, because I was talking about some infrastructure problems that were happening, and now we're going to move on to more, I guess, culture war issues, just at least touching up on some developments. At least, specifically since we're in the month of June, this is Pride Month. So, there's, of course, all these, like, conservatives now. I mean, they're really starting to get hysterical. It's really starting to get scary, just how hysterical they're getting about this, the anti-grooming, anti-pedophilia, which is really just homophobia. I mean, it's getting dangerous. It really is. And this is very serious. And of course, that's like one of the things that I want to make sure on this podcast. I want this to be a safe space for any of my queer listeners. And I was even looking at some of my demographics, and I saw like there was a good portion actually that was like non-binary. And I'm sure like even within like some of the male-female audience demographics, like I would assume like a good portion of that's also queer, which is good. Like even so like looking at my demographics, because of course the majority of it's going to be male. I mean, it's a podcast, right? But there's a good portion of it that is also female and also non-binary. So that's something that like I take a good that they gave me like a moment of pride, because I'm like, okay, at least this is a safe space that people feel welcome to listen into. And I do talk about women's issues and queer issues, which is important, because these are problems that are a result of fascism. I mean, these shouldn't be problems. If we lived in a normal society, these wouldn't be problems. But of course, we're living in a fascist dystopia, and these Christian radicals they're coming for everything, and they're getting more radicalized. They're getting more violent, as we're gonna talk about here. There was this incident that occurred in California due to like a school board meeting, where like literally like the school board was voting just for like the acknowledgement of, of Pride Month, and like also some LGBTQ studies in the school, which I mean, again, it's like they talk about like grooming, but it's literally just like gender identity, like sexuality identity, which is like, honestly, like that's pretty normal. It's like again, like these conservatives, like any kind of like sex ed or any kind of mention of like sex or biological sex, gender identity, that's grooming, that's wokeness, and they're gonna fucking throw a fit. And this is why, like, when because like I was talking with my mom the other day, and I was talking to her about having a history degree. She's like, "Oh, why don't you become a teacher?" And I'm like, "This is not the shit that I want to deal with. Like, I don't want to fucking deal with this shit, because I'm gonna teach kids the true history of the world, and that's gonna cause a lot of problems, because there's a lot of parents that don't want that. They want the revised portion. Like, again, like if I were teaching a history class, I'm not going to hold back. I don't care what the curriculum says, or what what, again, especially Texas now, because they made these laws about critical race theory, and now they're going against the LGBT studies. But yeah, I don't care. Like, I'm gonna teach it anyway. And that's why I want to do this show, because this way at least I have some freedom to speak on what I want. So again, talking about this episode that happened in Glendale, and there was some unrest. Of course, these fucking idiots, these Proud Boys, these fucking right-wing dickheads, they showed up to threaten the school board, and there was some violence. There was some fighting. So at least we'll talk here. So just to read from a local news report. So here, at least 3 people were arrested after fights broke out amid a Glendale School District meeting on the inclusion of LGBTQ plus studies on Tuesday. Large barricades set up by Glendale police to control crowds were seen containing hundreds of demonstrators outside of the Glendale Unified School District headquarters. A dispersal order was issued around 6:15 p.m. as police were heard using a loudspeaker to order the crowd's removal, declaring an unlawful assembly. A large barricade was placed in the middle of the parking lot, separating the 2 contentious groups. While most of the protests remained peaceful, police said a small group of individuals engaged in a behavior deemed unsafe and a risk to public safety. Officers were also heard saying that they would not hesitate to use chemical agents against the crowd. Following the arrest, additional attempts to de-escalate the crowd were unsuccessful. Extra police units were called to the scene. So demonstrators from both sides showed up on Tuesday night to either support or protest the school board's meeting for a consideration resolution on the LGBTQ curriculum. Attendees were made up of both parents and community members alike. Advocates said LGBTQ plus representation is especially important when it comes to inclusion in school studies. Opponents, however, said that while some didn't oppose the LGBTQ community, they didn't want the content to be introduced to the children. So again, it's always so funny whenever they have these caveats where it's like, well, you see, I have no problem with the community. However, I don't want my kids to learn about it. It's like, it's like they understand that like they can't just be bold-faced, like homophobic about it, but they are. And it's like, I don't want my kids to learn about this because God forbid they might actually find out that they identify with that. So yeah, man, it's just crazy. And it's just crazy too whenever they talk about like kids and like how like, oh, we have to protect their children, because it's like, well, you see, because if your kid comes out as gay, they're going to get bullied, because kids are cruel. And it's like, yeah, exactly, they're cruel because they have parents like you who don't hold them accountable and don't teach them not to be bullies. Okay, because if you're a bully and you're a fucking asshole, your kids are going to be bullies and assholes. Like, that's what's going to happen. Again, this is shit like this in these fucking public schools makes me worried to have children. Actually, I shouldn't say that, because I'm okay with having children, but this is what I get worried about with putting them in the public school system, because like I'm going to have to surround them with idiots like this. And this is not going to get better. This is not going to get better. My goodness. Wow, man. What the fuck, man? Anyway, it's just so bad. This is so bad. Oh my God, dude. I mean, dude, like, yeah, again, I was talking with my mom and she was like, oh, well, you can't base everything off of what's on the news. But it's like, bro, like, I literally went to these schools, so I know what it's in here. I know what's going on here, and it's most definitely going to get worse. Like, I can't even imagine what these schools are for kids these days. I feel so bad for them. Oh my god, this must be fucking prison, man. Holy shit. So bad. Wow. Anyway, so to continue, advocates said LGBTQ plus representation is especially important when it comes to inclusion in school studies. Quote, bringing in curriculum for K-6 on gender ideology, that is what we're against, said a Glendale parent opposing the curriculum. They believe money should be spent focusing on improving students' testing scores instead. Quote, we were talking about children, said Philip George, a LGBTQ curriculum opposer. They are not ready for such choices. It confuses them, and ultimately these things that the parent should decide. These are things that the parent should decide. Which again, like, how does a parent have any right to determine who a child is? Like, we're talking about their identity, like their literal identity. Like, let's just remove gender from it and just focus on identity. Like, you know, like, that's the thing that they don't understand. And of course, their idea is that this is my child who I own, and so I have the right to determine like every aspect of their life, including what they learn. Now, this is not me being against like parents having some control over like their studies, because I mean, of course, like that's, you know, it makes sense. You know, there's certain topics you want to have control over, but this is like the least harmful, and this is very clearly like based in bigotry and hatred, you know, in ignorance, and ultimately just, you know, trying to shield children away from ultimately discover who they might be, who they truly are, or not even who they might be, just rather like exposing them to like different people. Because again, like it's really like, you know, I'm so glad and like I feel very privileged, at least with my adolescence and childhood, that I grew up in a very culturally and religiously diverse community. So like I was exposed to all these different cultures, and you know, we lived pretty much together. I mean, even with my own school, like there was you know, they were, when we were studying religions, they had us do field trips to all these different houses of worship, and like they, you know, had us visit a temple, like a synagogue, a Buddhist temple, and a mosque, which is kind of crazy if you really think about that. Like, could you imagine if like a public school in like Texas did a field trip to a mosque? Oh my God, that school would get bomb threats. Like, and that's not a joke. Like, that would be like serious threats against that school, against the teachers and organizers and the school board. They'd be fucking throwing a fit. I don't want no Shia. I don't want no religious law in here. Like, yeah, man, it's just okay. That's what I meant to say. Sharia. I was like Shia. No, that's the sect. Okay, yeah, Sharia. I don't want no Sharia law in my country. That's not America. Like, just simply doing a little field trip to expose children to different religions and to teach them that like Islam isn't, you know, like this scary religion, like just some regular imam, right? I don't know, man. Anyway, like I'm getting ahead of myself. But again, like that's what these parents are ultimately about when they talk about, well, it's ultimately for us to decide what our children should be exposed to, because they just don't want their children to be exposed to any kind of diversity or any sort of like, you know, difference. They don't want their children to be exposed to different people, because then they might open themselves up and not make themselves hateful like their parents are. And yeah, that's just ultimately what it's about, because the parents want to have control. Because in the parents' mind, their children are property. They're not individuals who are meant to grow and become who they are, you know, become like fully functioning adults and members of society, productive members of society. They want to own that child. They want to instill their will upon it and reinforce their bigotry, their hatred and those views, because that's the only way that they can do it. They're talking about grooming, but it's like with this, like, you know, explicitly Christian fundamentalist bigotry and extremism, that is all predicated on grooming. Like, that's the only way that they can maintain it. It's all grooming that these Christians do. It's fucking ridiculous, man. And yeah, again, I talk about having kids and like my worries about them. That's another aspect that I have to worry about. This fucking Christian grooming that they are absolutely going to force upon my kids, which, anyway, I kind of got off track, but, at least with this, because, we're talking about, like, pride and this bigotry, but again, like, when you read, like, some of these, like, school board meetings, like, these parents are fucking rabid, dude. Like, American parents are fucking terrifying. They really are, man. It's fucking scary. Anyway, here, let's see what else has been noted here. Okay, just wanted to read at least from one of the supporters of this LGBTQ event. Quote, they said, quote, they should be taught because so many of them are already at 3 years old. Okay, hold on. Let me go back. Okay, so let me just read on these other quotes from the supporters. So, quote, our primary focus in our school district is to be inclusive, said Vec Chain, the school district superintendent. Quote, every student matters, every family member matters. We do follow state laws and California Department of Education guidelines. Quote, they should be taught because so many of them already at 3 years old know who they are and they need to know the options they have in life, said Maybe Putlow, an LGBTQ supporter. Quote, to close them off, to shut down the questions that they already have in their minds. I wish there were books out there that I could turn to, mentors out there I could turn to, or the facilities out there I could turn to because I grew up feeling totally alone. And to continue, Glendale school officials tell KTLA the Pride Inclusive curriculum is nothing new and has been in effect since 2019. However, the resolution is presented for reconsideration annually. The board was expected to vote and pass the resolution on Tuesday night. In an effort to prevent what school officials say is, quote, harmful disinformation, a curriculum fact sheet and FAQ statement regarding LGBTQ topics covered in the classroom were released online. The 3 people arrested faced, and then of course they're talking about the violence that happened. So 3 people arrested facing various charges, including willfully obstructing officers and the unlawful use of pepper spray. Their identities have not been released. And yeah, that's just at least what happened there. But again, it's just like, this is like the thing that's happening now whenever there's like a book reading event, like a drag book reading event where there's like literal fucking children and babies in the room. They're like, they don't care. It's like, oh, there's a drag queen reading a book. They don't care. I mean, they only see like a drag queen, but to them it's like this, like, because a drag queen, like, she's going to be like all dressed up and flamboyant and she's going to be like a great time. Like, the kid, they're just going off of the vibe. So when they see like this, like, this wacky person wearing like this like flamboyant outfit and who's like, being performative, and how drag queens are, they're like, oh, hello. I don't know. I've never been to a drag event, but I mean, the kids love that. They love seeing the wacky flamboyant colors, and like they love somebody hyping them up. And yeah, man, like I'd take my kid to a drag queen event. Who cares? But it's like, dude, like kids are far safer at a drag queen event than they are in the police station, than they are in the public schools, than they are in a fucking church. Okay? So, yeah, all this like grooming allegations is not real. Okay? And it's so fascinating to me that these fucking idiots, like, they don't seem to understand. I mean, they do get it. They know it's just the hatred, but it's like there's like literally like a sex offender registry. Okay? So we can actually statistically find out who, like, what demographic is like more likely to be like a sex abuser for children. Okay, and I'm pretty sure if we actually like did like the brass tacks and like found out the statistics, it would be pretty overwhelmingly white and male and Christian. Yeah, so plenty of cops and politicians and fucking people with position and wealth and power that abuse children, and these are the groomers that they want to focus on the drag queens and like the LGBTQ. Not to say that like queer people aren't capable of being sexual predators, but it's just like, it's just like, come on, like, get real. Like, anyway, man, it's just so ridiculous. And again, because I'm a logical person, so like whenever I reach a situation, I try to make sense of it. But again, there's nothing to make sense about this. Like, it's all hatred and ignorance and bigotry, and that's it. It's just blind rage, and they just want somebody to target. And again, they always target the weakest individuals, the weakest people in our society, to make themselves feel stronger. But hey, that's what we are dealing with. Anyway, so I just wanted to at least touch up on some other topics. Oh, and then also, because we're talking about this event, there was a influencer involved. I mean, I don't really pay too much attention, but this influencer was like part of FaZe Clan, or I don't know. Like I used to be really big into like, I guess, esports and stuff like that, but especially like Modern Warfare esports. But now I don't really give a shit. But I'm guessing this is like the FaZe Clan, one of the associates of that. I don't even know who it is. It's some fucking idiot. They're all idiots. But like he was involved in that, and he was one of those who got arrested. And then his I guess operator, like skin bundle, they pulled that. Activision pulled that, and then all these different streamers, these like Call of Duty FPS streamers, Battle Royale streamers, now they're saying, well, if you're gonna ban him, then take me off too. And now Activision is taking them off as well. So it's just like, it's so funny, and it's nice to see that a lot of these corporations, when it comes to this like pride stuff, like on the one hand, they're kind of like feeling the pressure, because like they're saying like this Pride Month, like less companies have been posting Pride material and apparel, because again there's so much backlash, because this is terrorism is what it is, and these people were calling bomb threats and shit. But there's some companies that are taking a step back, because of course they're going to follow the money. So anytime they face any resistance, they're going to take a step back, because they only care about the money. They don't really care about the ethics and the inclusivity. But then you see moments like this where like they don't give a shit. They're like, nope, we're not going to tolerate this. So it's nice to see. I mean, I'm not going to celebrate corporations too much, but hey, if they get something right, it doesn't hurt to make some good notes on them. But yeah, at least that's what's happening there. Again, like our school board and this this mess of a culture war that we're dealing with, that's just stuff that we have to touch up on later. But anyway, so last section on the domestic politics, and I talked a long time actually. I talked a very long time. I hope my recording doesn't time out. But anyway, so the last story when it comes to this domestic politics section. So what we have here is Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West. He has announced, and I'm sure some of you have heard, he has announced his nomination, or he's announced his candidacy, or his campaign. Fuck it, whatever. His campaign for the nomination for the presidency of the United States. Now, he started initially with the People's Party, which is that like Jimmy Dore like political group. And if you listen to a lot of my earlier podcasts, I did speak positively on Jimmy Dore. Of course, now I don't. Like, that's something that I've really changed on. Again, I didn't really fully understand who he was and what his political stances were. So now at least I have a better understanding, and I certainly want to take a step away. And so when Cornel West initially announced his campaign, like his support or his launch of the campaign with the People's Party, I was like, damn it. I was like, fuck, come on, man. Like, oh man, it's like that that meme with Wesley Snipes. I forget which movie it was. It was like one of those drug lord movies in New York, where he's like, he has to like point a gun and kill somebody, but he's crying. It's like that's the meme so many people were posting on Twitter. It's just like people like come on, man, don't make me kill you. Like, but now Cornel West has switched on to, or he's switching from the People's Party. So that was like his initial campaign launch. And so he's switching from that to the Green Party. So now that he has switched on to the Green Party and he's seeking that presidential nomination through that party, now I can certainly take him more seriously. Not something, again, because I know people talk about third party votes, but like, dude, man, I mean, like, this is Dr. Cornel West, okay? Like, this is like one of the, again, like, he's a left-wing thinker. I mean, I wouldn't say he's too radical, but in terms of like mainstream left-wing politics, he is certainly up there, and he's certainly, I mean, I would argue he's further to the left of Bernie Sanders. So this is certainly good. I mean, I like him a lot. I like what he stands for. I certainly like him. I prefer him more to Biden, Biden or whatever, like milquetoast or Democratic nominee they're going to push on us. I've never voted Green Party, but like Cornel West, he's a serious contender. He's a serious political thinker, and I feel that he can do a great job. Actually, I mean, who knows if they'll actually put him on the debate stage? They probably won't, because they always try to sabotage these kind of votes, third party votes. But yeah, man, like even if he doesn't win, which he probably won't, it would be good to see him on the stage against Biden, against whichever Republican nominee gets in power, like either Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. Yeah, man, and we'll just see what happens, because like I don't know, man, like I'm just tired of the Democrats. And as I said, like I don't vote presidential elections. I vote local legislatures, sure, federal legislatures, Senate, House Representatives, county judges, whatever. I'll do that. But presidency, I can't do it. I can't, especially with these Democrats, the way they push Joe Biden on us. Like I'm not going to do it. So for at least with Cornel West, especially now that he switched to the Green Party, that's something that I might consider. That's something that I could seriously consider, and I really don't care what anybody says, because we need a shakeup. We need a shakeup of the political establishment, and this is somebody who can get up there, who can actually like articulate true like leftist principles in a way that's actually appealing. That's not going to throw people off, because that's another thing when it comes to like running for office. Like you have to be likable. You have to be likable, and Cornel West, he's kind of like a grandpa. He's like, yeah, man, like, Cornel West, he's like the, he's the unk, right? He's the woke unk, the Black Panther Party. He's like, step up, brother. How you doing, young man? Like, like if I saw him at a cookout, family reunion, like, bro, I'd be with him like all night, just like getting that wisdom, because like he's gonna spit knowledge, like just every word, So like it would be good to see him on the stage, on a national platform, really making his appeal, because he can certainly do it in a way that's not going to make people scared, like, oh, leftist radicalism, or who knows? I mean, people are already like, they're already turned off by like leftists, any sort of like leftist principles. I mean, shit, like I'm partially like disowned by like some members of my family, because like I'm like slightly left-wing adjacent, It's fucking stupid. But yeah, man, like there's like the anti-socialist, anti-communist like hysteria in this country is very serious. So like I don't know, man. So I'm not even saying that he would win. I just want him up there to talk and start, having that like, when it comes to like ideology, it's like an infection, right? So like the more you talk, the more you're exposed to people to this stuff, especially with Cornel West here, Dr. Cornel West. He can do it in a way that like actually like lets people guards down, where it's like, oh wait, like let's listen to him, because he's a good person. He has a good vibe to him, and then you kind of like let your guard down, and then you let him speak, and you're like, oh, he actually has some good points. So I feel like he could really appeal to like moderate regular voters. At least here, let me talk from the Hill, at least on this his nomination with the Green Party, or his launch, his switch over to the Green Party. So here, from the Hill, the progressive activist Cornel West announced he is seeking the Green Party nomination for president in 2024 after declaring his candidacy for the People's Party nomination last week. West said that he decided to run as a candidate for the Green Party to try to build a broad united front and coalition strategy. Quote, "In the spirit of a broad united front and coalition strategy, I am pursuing the nomination of the Green Party for the President of the United States," West tweeted Wednesday, which is what today. Continuing, he asked people to, quote, "support this unprecedented effort to empower precious poor and working people here and abroad. I thank the volunteers of the People's Parties for the initial launch." The Green Party tweeted in response to West's post that the party welcomes his participation in his contest for a nominee. Quote, Dr. West is an important voice for social and economic justice in line with our party's platform. We look forward to him participating in the nomination process, the Green Party tweeted. West said in his campaign launch video that his candidacy would be centered around healthcare, living wages, housing, reproductive rights, and, quote, de-escalating the destruction of the planet and democracy. He said that he is running for a third-party candidate because neither party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, Ukraine, the Pentagon, and big tech. West faces long odds with his third-party run, but polls showing that many do not want President Biden or former President Trump to be their party's nominee could open up greater support for an alternate candidate. So the Democratic Party, the Republicans, I'm not going to say that the Republicans or any sort of conservative would vote for Dr. West, but still, they're making very clear that these establishments are divided. Okay, I can say at least for the leftists and Democratic establishment, we need somebody like Dr. West to shake things up. And I think there's a good opportunity with him. Let me actually see, because I know they're going to say something about his age. Let me see about Cornel West. How old is he? He is 70 years old. So Dr. Cornel West is 70 years old. Let me see about Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is like what? Hold on, let me see here. Yeah, so Joe Biden. So Cornel West is 70. Joe Biden is 80. Joe Biden is 80 years old. Donald Trump, and this is assuming he doesn't get arrested, he is 77. So, I don't necessarily care too much for age, but at least, Dr. Cornel West getting in at 70, 71, and then let's say he gets 2 terms, he gets out by the time he's 80. It's imaginable, it's feasible, and of course, he's not some some Joe Schmo. He is a true political economic thinker with a serious platform, a true left-wing platform, in a way that's not unappealing or I don't know. People are going to find whatever excuses to talk down on leftists, but I think in Dr. Cornel West's case, as I said, you put him up there, you have him speak. He is a great orator. He is one of the greatest orators that we have right now. I would argue he's better than Bernie Sanders, really, when it comes to his oration, where he can break people down and he can bring people in. And when he talks, you're listening. You're oh wow, let's listen to this guy. He's good. So, again, I know I might turn off some people because people don't like taking third-party candidates seriously, and of course they're going to say no because it's going to take away from the blue party vote and this and that. But it's bro, because that's what they always say. The Democrats, they always say, well, you see, because we have to keep voting Democrat because then we might lose the Roe v. Wade. Oh, we lost it already. So what now? Because you guys don't know how to act and you don't know how to govern because the Democratic establishment isn't competent. Shit, look what they did with Dianne Feinstein. They kept her. They have her propped up Weekend at Bernie's, and she's literally on death's door, and they're and again this idea of hey, we should recuse her or get her out of here because it's elder abuse. The fact they have all these elderly people and it's just covered up. It's bro, this is elderly abuse. But then again, you have to understand that those elderly people, they want to stay in power, so it's it's whatever, it's not. But yeah, I don't know. With Cornel West, I'm looking forward to this. I'm interested to see what he has to offer. I'm glad that he went away from that People's Party because again, that's not even a real party. At least with the Green Party, they have real ballots. So, this is interesting. Yeah, and it's it's not something I guess was it Marianne Williamson? That was another well, she was a Democratic nominee, but she gives off Green Party vibes. I knew a guy who was big on her, and he's I don't talk to him anymore, but they were a bit weird because they were talking about the Anunnaki and this new age mysticism, the energy, fucking crystal energy stuff. That's the type of shit Marianne Williamson was bringing. And then there's also Jill Stein, which I wasn't really taking her seriously either. Because you're Marianne Williamson, Jill Stein, who the fuck are these people? Who? They're just random. They're randos. At least with Dr. Cornel West, he has been a true civil rights like thinker, activist, one of the most prominent like black intellectual thinkers of our living memory. You talk about like James Baldwin, Dr. Cornel West, W.E.B. Du Bois. I mean, like all that. It's yeah. So crazy times. But at least here, oh yeah, and Kwame Ture, I can go on, but like he's among those like level of like black intellectual thought. So it's just nice to see that he's like running for the presidency in a third party as well, because that's the type of thing that we need. That's the type of shakeup that we need. And again, I just want to see him. I mean, they're going to try to sabotage him. I mean, they're going to make it so that he doesn't get like a town hall or any kind of like debate stage, because they're not going to amplify him. But at least in this show, I'm going to try to amplify him, because he could have a good platform and a good anti-establishment position, which is very important this day and age. Right. So now that we've touched up on domestic, sort of news and stories, and that was a pretty big portion. I wasn't expecting to talk at length like that, but I'll continue at least with some other developments. Now that we're going into the more international geopolitical sort of situation. So there's a lot to talk about there as well. A lot of new developments, and I wanted to first start off with the more, I guess, exciting stories, especially with the Ukraine war and those developments that are happening, because there's a lot that's been happening, a lot of new developments. At least just a quick rundown, because I'm not going to pretend like I'm one of these like military analysts when it comes to this war, because there's some certain things that, of course, like with this new age of warfare, that are still not fully understood. I mean, that's the thing about like when it comes to modern war, like we're watching it play out in real time, so we can only really base off of past events and past military operations, draw some conclusions off of that. But ultimately, we have to watch this in real time. And of course, what's happening now, because there was the recent battle in Bakhmut, which is a huge battle. Of course, now it's fully, or I should say fully, it's like 99% in the control of Russia. There's still like a little holdout, but I mean, the city's gone. And of course, there's some fighting in the areas like along the front lines. But now there's the fabled counteroffensive that's now taking place. I mean, they were hyping this counteroffensive for months, and I didn't even think it was going to happen. I was just like, they're saying counteroffensive, but it's like, okay, is it really going to happen? But now it's happening. Now it's actually taking place in the province or the oblast of Zaporizhzhia, and at least so far, well, okay, there's a counteroffensive. But before I talk about that operation and the developments that are happening there, I wanted to talk at least about the recent dam that had exploded in Ukraine. And this was sort of like in the prelude to the counteroffensive that occurred. So of course, with this dam explosion, the breach and the flooding and the downstream from the Dnieper River, it's there's speculation. So of course they're saying that there's Ukrainians and there's Russians involved. So we of course aren't going to fully find out who it is, because of course some people are going to be Russia, and some other people might blame Ukraine. I at the least here, from what I've researched into it, my understanding at least is that, and this is my speculation, because you might be surprised to find out that I'm not the most pro-Ukrainian on this channel. I mean, I'm not pro-Russia or pro-Putin at all, so I'm not saying that. But when it comes to this conflict and this basically proxy war between NATO and the EU and Russia, the Russian bloc, it's not clear cut and it's not black and white, and we can't look at this with a good and bad, because again, there's so many people that try to do that. They try to like make this like geopolitical struggle into like a good guys versus bad guys. Like they're all bad guys. They're all bad. They're all selfish and they're all looking out for their interests. But the question is, who is less likely to come to the table? Or like the fact that the West and NATO aren't interested in brokering any kind of peace agreement, any sort of like truce or ceasefire, really shows that they don't care about this conflict at all. They want this conflict to get dragged out. They don't care how many Ukrainians die in the process. They do not care. They're going to drag out this war. They want this war to continue. They want this to get bloody because it's business. War is a business. That's what they're looking for. They just want to sell weapons. They want to sell their tanks, their jets, their smart bombs. I mean, dude, it's just crazy to me. And like, even if you're like, I just know that I'm going to get into an argument with somebody about this. And like, they're going to talk. And it's just so interesting how like, when we talk about stuff like our healthcare in this country, our infrastructure, like their first concern is, oh well, you see the budget and the spending, and we just don't have the money for that. But then you ask them, then if I ask them about this money that we spend on Ukraine, the billions of dollars that we throw at Ukraine, they're not even going to focus on the money. They're going to be like, what? You don't want Ukraine to defend themselves? Like that's what's going to turn into. And like, dude, it's just like, this whole war is fucking pointless. It really is. Like, these people are getting killed for nothing. For like land that like, you know, Crimea, the Donbass, the Luhansk regions, like it's not even like they want to liberate the people that live there, because they fucking hate the people that live there, who are majority like ethnic Russians. So like, if the Ukrainians went into those regions, it would be a massacre. So it's not like they're liberating those territories. It's literally just land. That's all it is. And of course, Russia, they have their own interests in mind, and you know, I'm not saying that they're the good guys either, but dude, like, this could have easily been solved through a peaceful negotiation, you know, partition of land, because fuck it, like, is like a nuclear escalation really worth Crimea and like these regions that nobody even knew about? It's like nobody knew about this shit until like the Russians started, you know, invading, which of course they did invade, but that was in response to the 2014 coup that happened with the Euromaidan. So it's like the Euromaidan protests that were instigated by the CIA and by NATO in the West. It's just like, it's just ridiculous. And it's like you go all the way down this conflict. And I'm not going to get into like a debate with somebody about this, because like it's really pointless, because they already have their position, their conclusions. So we're just going to talk back and forth. Like I was watching the Vosh Midwestern Marx debate, and that was such a waste of time. I mean, like, I think his name is Eddie, but like he did a good job explaining his position and actually like explaining the history. And like this fucking Vosh idiot, like, oh my god, like this, like, so Eddie was actually like explaining the history. Like he was going to like World War II and like the Banderites, which is like how you should explain the situation, because like that's how history works. You can't just look at the Russian-Ukrainian war and the invasion and just be like, this is the only thing that's happened and nothing before that. Like, we can't examine anything that happened before that. We just look at this situation, Russia invaded Ukraine, therefore Russia's bad. But then not look at the almost century of political tensions that have occurred, the divisions, especially with World War II and the Ukrainian nationalists who collaborated with the Germans, the Nazis who invaded, and then they turned on their Jewish neighbors, their communist neighbors. Like, this is what happened, particularly in Western Ukraine, and those like other like ethnic cleansings that occurred in Galicia with the Poles and such. So like, that's the legacy that with this current government in Ukraine now, that's the legacy that has been continued. Like, they celebrate those Ukrainian nationalists. I mean, these are ultra-nationalist Ukrainian right-wing Nazis. That's what they are. And of course, they talk about Zelensky being Jewish, but it's like, bro, like, he's still a nationalist. So like, I don't care. Like, anyway. So yeah, this war is messy. This war, there's a lot of history behind this war. So it's not so simple, but at the same time, like, even if it is a complicated political problem, which like all wars are complicated, it doesn't take away from the fact that we need some sort of peace talk. We need some sort of agreement or some sort of settlement. Like, even if we can't even get anywhere, we need to at least get to the table. But Ukraine isn't interested in that, and the United States and NATO and the EU are not interested in that. They don't want to do it. They could easily do it and like, let's broker a peace deal, a ceasefire, at least, in the hopes of not, escalating into a nuclear fucking war, not getting all these people killed. But hey, there's money on the line, and people want to make as much money as possible selling weapons. So that's why this war is like the best thing to happen for the defense contractors, for these weapon manufacturers. I mean, where's the United States going to sell the weapons if there's no Ukraine war? I mean, they have Israel, they have Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is starting to make peace agreements with the Yemen war. Israel, I mean, they're going to keep bashing the Palestinians, but they're not gonna buy as many weapons as Ukraine is when they're in active conflict. It's just, yeah, man. It's just, it's ridiculous, honestly. What a fucking war, man. And we're so involved in this when we don't even have to. Like, the U.S. just gets involved wherever it needs to, and it's not because the sovereignty and the human rights. No, it's they want to step on Russia's toes. That's all this is about. Okay. And and this is understood. It's not even no, actually no, because no, it's understood. We have to stop Russian expansion, which is what Russian expansion? They again, this is where I feel lucky to have taken I took a Russian history class, a pre-Soviet Russian history. So from the Kievan Rus all the way up to, actually not even that, the Scythians. So really early Yamnaya, Indo-European Russian history, all the way up through the Kievan Rus, and then the Muscovites, the Novgorod republics, the principalities, the Mongol invasions, all through that. So when you look at that history of Russia, because again, you talk about Russia, but then you have the Rus people, so that includes the Belarusians and the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians are part of that Russian family. They all descend from that Rus heritage, that Slavic Rus heritage, and it's unfortunate now that we're seeing that they want to step away from that Russian identity. So it's I don't know. I mean, I can't really think of any analogous groups, but they're all cousins. They're all families. It's one big family, and then Ukraine, I guess, is the little kid, the youngest sibling that's they want to step away and be their own thing. And then, I mean, that's an analogy that I've heard. They want to step away and be their own thing, but it's not even in a way that's productive, but rather confrontational and actively helping, I guess, their enemies. That's the way that Russia sees it. Anyway, I'm just trying to give their perspective. I'm not even saying that it's right for Russia to do what they've been doing, but we have to make sense of it, because there's too many people saying that Russia's a bad actor and they're behaving like an irrational actor, when really what they're doing, the United States has invaded countries for less than what Russia's doing. Okay, the United States will invade a country halfway around the world because they had the audacity to nationalize their resources. At least with Russia's case, they had to do this and intervene because there was a coup orchestrated by a foreign government, the United States, for a confrontational, right-wing government, an illegitimate government that was actively threatening ethnic Russians within their territories. It's once you understand that, and then also with Crimea, there's a naval base. So even just that naval base aspect alone, the United States would have no problem invading a country to secure its bases. No issue whatsoever. So it's the way that they talk about Russia, this, we've never seen anything like this. Bro, Russia literally or America, the United States literally destroyed Libya and Syria, all these different countries, because they don't like the people in charge. But it's not even those people, it's not even they're concerned about the human rights abuses. It's just oh, well, those dictators, they're not on our payroll, so therefore we're concerned about the human rights violations. That's all it is. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be here being all pro-Putin and such, because I don't agree with war in general. I don't want any country to get invaded, but you have to make sense of it, and you have to actually put the proper context in place and say, here's the reason why they invaded, and it's for these reasons, because NATO does want to encircle Russia, and they want to dominate Russia, and even invade Russia and break it apart. Because they always talk about decolonization in Russia and breaking apart, balkanizing Russia into these independent republics, ethnic republics. which, I mean, like Russia, like 100 years ago, was literally like a warlord, like, civil war, like divided between different armies and such. So like that's like what they want to bring it back to, which would be a disaster. Like millions of people would die, and there would be like a breakdown of the infrastructure and agriculture. Like it would be a disaster. I mean, the collapse of the Soviet Union, that alone was like one of the greatest humanitarian crises of the late 20th century. And then they want to start that again. They like, dude, it's just crazy. Anyway, I was talking about this dam breach and I got off track, but I want to talk about this dam breach and just about who might be at fault here, because there's a lot of speculation on this, and I just find it's coincidental because this happened like literally days before this counteroffensive took place. And then there's also other aspects of this dam breach, because one of like the main canals for like water in the Crimean Peninsula came from this dam. Like it came from the reservoir and the dam and the canal which fed into Crimea, and that canal had been obstructed. Like during the 2014 civil war, or the invasion and civil war, they blocked that canal so that way the Crimean Peninsula wouldn't get fresh water. And then, of course, the invasion happened and they were able to restore it. And then now they blew up the dam and that canal can no longer provide fresh water. So that's one aspect that it's just, to me, when they talk about Russia wanting to destroy this dam, it's like, why would they do that? Because providing them fresh water. And then also, like, just looking at some satellite images, I saw that a lot of the downstream flooding that occurred due to the water level change, most of it affected the Russian lines along the Kherson banks, or the southern banks by Kherson and the Dnieper River, and then they got flooded out, and most of those positions were Russian. So it's like, why would Russia bomb a dam that provides them fresh water and is also going to flood their positions? And then this happens like literally days before the Ukrainian counteroffensive. So it's just like, just some things to consider, because of course people are going to say, oh, it's Russia, oh, it's Ukraine. But it's like, you have to look at the circumstances. And again, like, people keep assuming that Russia is like some bumbling fool. I mean, sure, yeah, the first stages of the war were embarrassing. They're very embarrassing. But that's like pretty much like every military operation that Russia has done. Like the first opening stages of it, when they're like trying to get because they're not like a professional standing army where that's like operating like the U.S. like 24/7. That's like ready to respond 24/7. Like, this is like the first major military operation since World War II for Russia, or I should say actually like Afghanistan or something like that. So like, this is big, and they haven't done something like this in a while. So of course they were going to mess up at first, and they wanted to do like a lightning campaign, and they wanted to take it as quickly as possible with the least amount of damages, but then they overextended themselves. So they talked about like the fuel shortages that occurred, but it's not as though like Russia was running out of gas. They just didn't have the logistics to provide it. So those are different things. So you have the supply, but then you have to have the logistics to actually replenish your troops. So they just overextended themselves. So that's why now you see this different phase now where they're more of like an encroaching wave, where it's just like this big moving front line, just like slowly consuming and taking over. So, we saw that in Bakhmut. I mean, the Bakhmut battle was horrible. Like, that was like truly one of the just looking at those images, like, it's crazy to watch like these little towns in this, like, again, because like it's the Ukrainian countryside, which is a beautiful country, really. But it's just sad to see like this sort of fighting and this destruction, and like, it's war. So it's just mayhem and destruction and just death. And, these areas are just wiped out. And like, who knows how long it's going to take for those areas to get rebuilt. Because you have places like Mariupol, which they made some repairs, and they already, like, I've seen some images where like they have like these new built apartment complexes, so like the residents can live in. But Mariupol was like, I believe, like a port, so that's a little bit easier for them to replenish. In a place like Bakhmut, which is kind of like a little more on the plains and such. I mean, who knows how they're going to replenish that and rebuild that. But these are the things that have been happening with this war. And I mean, again, this is a big war. This is one of the biggest wars of our lifetime. So yeah, this is crazy, the fighting. And of course, there's this breach of the dam, which, I wanted to at least talk about this quick article just about some updates. But reading from the AP here, what their notes of this breach is that, from the AP, quote, the fallout from the breach of a river dam along a front line of Russia's war in Ukraine continued to wreak havoc on lives, livelihoods, and the environment on Wednesday. When the Kakhovka Dam ruptured on Tuesday, it sent a torrent of water from Ukraine's largest reservoir into streets and homes downstream on the Dnieper River, where tens of thousands of people live, in the thick of a combat zone where shelling regularly takes place. It's not clear what caused the breach. The structure had already been damaged in the war. The Ukrainian government, which controls the river's western bank and the city of Kherson, has accused Russia's forces of blowing up the facility. Officials in Russia, which controls the eastern bank for about the last 300 kilometers, or about 185 miles, before the river reaches the Black Sea, has blamed Ukrainian military strikes. What are the latest developments here? Authorities and rescue workers on both sides stepped up efforts Wednesday to pull beleaguered residents to higher and drier ground. Volunteers in the city of Kherson buzzed around in inflatable motorboats to ferry people to safety or gather belongings left behind a day before. Around 3,000 people were evacuated from both sides of the river, and water levels are continuing to rise, officials said. And yeah, so there's tens of thousands of people in these villages and these areas, and they got flooded out. I think they even said that there was like a zoo where like all the animals died. So like, this is sad. Yeah, this is a pretty devastating disaster. Again, they said the dam was already damaged, and then of course they did more damage to it. And I think even also what they said was that this reservoir that was created from the dam, now that the river is lowering its water levels, it's going to affect the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, again, which is like already been, they've been talking about that at length because of the occupation of Russia. There's different artillery strikes, fighting in the area. So yeah, they're concerned about these decrease in water levels and how that could affect the cooling systems. And it's funny too, because like some people were referring, like you saw, there were some like articles being written about Chernobyl. Oh yeah, this would be Ukraine's Chernobyl, and it's like, bro, Chernobyl isn't Ukraine. Like, it's so funny. Like, oh well, like how funny how, and again, the Zaporizhzhia like nuclear plant, that is like the largest currently operating in Europe. So how funny is it that Ukraine has been the victim of now possibly a second nuclear meltdown disaster? Like, just their luck, Anyway, but I mean, that's the concerns that are happening. This dam, getting damaged and destroyed, and the flooding from that, and of course, there's accusations on who might be at fault for there. I offered my theories on that, but honestly, like, this is one of those things like the Nord Stream pipeline. Like, we're just never gonna know, because like there's just all sorts of conspiracy theories. But yeah, it's very likely that the mainstream story isn't actually the real story. So we might never know the truth of it, but the current mainstream story that's at hand, that's most likely not the real case. But this is the time of espionage and the Cold War, and just stories being hidden away. But yeah, so at least we're talking about this the dam breach, but also being linked with the counteroffensive that's taking place. Now there's all sorts of reports coming out about this counteroffensive, which I'm not like following it like 24/7. I kind of see reports whenever I can. Again, I'm not really putting any bets. I don't think Ukraine is going to win. I think they're going to do a lot of damage, but I don't think they're going to win. But we're just going to have to see. Again, it's just interesting how we're watching this, and of course, like the thing about the Zaporizhzhia line, that front line where this operation is taking place, is that Russia has heavily defended it. I mean, like, they have trench lines. Like, this is really like World War I like level defenses that they got, and This is a classic strategy that Russia has, from the Soviet era, of defense in depth, where they have lines and layers of defenses. So the idea behind it is that they let the enemy come in, but as they're coming in, they're facing, line after line of defenses, which is going to grind them down. So, they might make some, headways, significant gains, but it's going to come at a heavy cost. And, the question is how long they can do that, like how long they can continue to break through, and whether they can actually replenish it. Because, you can, again, they have all this military support and like all this like funding from the United States and from the West, but like, there's still a question of manpower. Like, you still need to put guys on the ground. Like, even with all our modern warfare and all our, all the modern warfare that we got, all the technology and vehicles and these drones now that are a big part of it now, you still need infantry. You still need, actual like men and women on the ground to, occupy the land that you took. You have to actually hold it with infantry, which, there's a question of whether Russia or Ukraine can actually sustain that. Because again, like, this operation is going to be bloody. And even if Russia does like significant damage, they're also going to lose a lot of men and women, soldiers. It's crazy. I mean, I even read one report that said that something like 15% of the Bradleys that have been supplied have been out of service now, like destroyed and just decommissioned because of the fighting on this counteroffensive. And then there are also like the Leopards that they gave. Like, there's some images that came out that show that like there was like this one like Leopard, or like I think one or two Leopards, they got stuck, or they were just like destroyed, and then they sent in Bradleys to recover them, and then those Bradleys were destroyed, and then they sent more. So like it was like literally just like a pile up of destroyed vehicles, and it's just like, wow. And there's just all kinds of videos coming out of this I guess you could say clusterfuck, if you want to call it, because like I don't know what Ukraine is thinking about this. Again, like, this Ukrainian offensive most likely won't succeed, and even then, like I don't even think they have air superiorities. Like, how do you hope to have an offensive when you don't even have air superiority? Like, Russia still has significant hold of the air. Who knows? And then also, because we're talking about this counteroffensive, but then also Ukraine, they sent these Russian insurgents and like paramilitaries into the Belgorod, what's it called? Hold on. So Belgorod Oblast. So yeah, they've had incursions. So it's not actually like the Ukrainian military, but rather like Russian volunteers. They're like, they kind of like did an Uno reverse card with like the separatists in the Donbass region. Like they had Russian volunteers for the Ukrainian side invade Russia and then establish their Russian People's Republic or whatever. Which I think at this point they all died. It's just like, yeah, they or at least either most of them have died and they still have a hold somewhere. But still, it's just like, what is Ukraine thinking? Like, they're trying to make these moves thinking that they can actually like punch up to Russia when like they're like Russia isn't even at full mobilization, dude. Like, they're not at full mobilization, and like this is like Ukraine trying to punch them in the nose, and it's like, you're just hurting yourself, really. And again, like, you want this war to be over, just like, like, who cares? Like, it's Crimea. Like, it's not even like, I don't know, man. Because like, because sometimes you sound like a Russian apologist, but like, dude, it's just like, who fucking cares, man? It's like they couldn't get this land back for like 8 years, and now the real war has started, and they've lost more land, and they're trying to make a counteroffensive, which is most likely going to get a lot of people killed, a lot of equipment destroyed, just a waste of money. And like, they're trying to like have this war of attrition with Russia, who has a far greater industrial capacity than Ukraine. Like, Ukraine only can get the weapons and support from outside, like military support from the West and the United States, which like that's not going to last forever, because like the West and the EU, the United States, even though they're making a good buck from this, from all the weapons deals, they're going to get tired of this, and they're going to say, okay, now's the time to make a peace agreement, because this is starting to get, this is starting, like they might get bored of it. It's like, this is getting boring, so yeah, let's just make a peace agreement because we got our checks. So I don't know. Anyway, just want to talk at least about this counteroffensive a little bit more in depth. And this is from the BBC, and this is of course, from the Russian perspective. So might be a little more biased, but hey, just wanted to, with this show, I want to at least give you both sides, because like I really don't care who wins or loses. I mean, for the most part, I would prefer NATO not to win, which means Ukraine not winning. But again, I'm more concerned about peace. That's ultimately what I want, and that's what needs to happen. We need to have a truce and a ceasefire, and that's most likely going to include secession of territories. So that's just the nature of war, dude. Like, sorry, that's diplomacy. So anyway, just reading from BBC. So here, the Russian President Vladimir Putin claims that Ukraine's counteroffensive has been unsuccessful, with his army suffering major losses. Speaking at a meeting of war correspondents, he said that Kiev's losses were approaching a catastrophic level. That has not been verified, and President Zelensky has denied the counteroffensive is failing. Quote, "There is movement forward," he said in his nightly video address. He thanked Ukrainian troops for, quote, "every step and every meter of Ukrainian land that is being liberated from Russian evil." And again, like, this is so petty about this war too, because like it's very clearly like Russophobic. They're talking about how Russians are orcs and how evil they are, when it's like, if they had said something more along the lines of, oh, this is Putin's ambitions, and this is Putin, putting the Russian people in harm's way, then there would be some sort of appeal. Then you could say, okay, because they're identifying that it's Putin that's the problem. But this instead has now extended onto Russia, the Russian people, the Russian culture. I mean, they have like different laws in Ukraine against Russian like language, and like people get regularly harassed for speaking Russian, which is fucking crazy, because like Russian is like Russian and Ukrainian are so like similar. It's just like they can literally like pretty much talk to each other. Like a Russian and a Ukrainian can speak in their own language, and they can understand each other fairly well. So in a lot of ways, it's really just a dialect. But of course, if you say that, this causes problems. And again, like most of these people, like they are like their grandparents are like Russian, So it's like, imagine some babushka who's like lived in the country for like 90 years, just going about her business, and she's speaking Russian, which she's always done for her whole life. And then all of a sudden this war breaks out, and then she gets harassed for speaking Russian, which is like, and there's like plenty of videos of that too, where like there's like a grandma and she's like minding her own business, and then people are harassing her because she's speaking Russian. And it's like, dude, and it's like, you think you're the good guy here harassing this old lady? Jesus. Anyway, so just continuing here. So to continue, so this was echoed by Valery Zalunzi, the commander-in-chief of the country's armed forces, who wrote on Telegram, "There has been, quote, some successes. We are implementing our plans moving forward." Ukraine's military declared on Wednesday that Russian losses in the past 24 hours has included 680 soldiers, 8 tanks, and an air defense system. Both sides give daily claims about enemy casualties, which are impossible to verify. Kiev's counteroffensive is in its early stages, and modest gains have been made in the eastern and southeastern Zaporizhzhia regions. Mr. Zelensky has also claimed advances in Bakhmut, but the situation is not as clear-cut as the triumphant claims of liberation that come from Kiev earlier this week. On Tuesday, the BBC was granted access to some of the first settlements in eastern Donetsk, where the Ukrainian flag is now flying. Many are deserted, and in some areas, Russian forces are pushing back. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said that while it was still early days, progress was being made in repelling Russian troops. Quote, "What we do know is that the more land that Ukrainians are able to liberate, the stronger hand they will have at the negotiating table," he told U.S. President Joe Biden at a White House meeting. Without providing evidence, Mr. Putin said that Ukrainians had lost over 160 tanks, while Russia had lost 54. He also suggested Ukrainian troops' losses were 10 times greater than Russia's, insisting that Kiev had not succeeded in any of the sectors. His comments were dismissed by a U.S. official who anonymously told the AP news agency they were not accurate and warned against taking Moscow's public assessment seriously. Okay, and just to continue as well. So although most of Mr. Putin's statements during his meeting with war correspondents were typically self-congratulatory, he did acknowledge that authorities in Moscow could have better anticipated recent cross-border attacks into Russia from Ukraine. He said he was considering whether, quote, to create on Ukrainian territory a kind of sanitary zone at such a distance from which it would be impossible to get our territory. Mr. Putin also suggested that Russia was short of high-precision ammunition, communication equipment, aircraft drones, and so on, despite weapons productions having increased over the past year. Ukraine has had long-standing concerns about Russia's ability to build weaponry. On Tuesday, Mr. Zelensky again called for tougher sanctions to halt the flow of weapon components, some of which, he said, were being manufactured by Ukrainians' partner countries. He said that Russia was using such components to build the type of missiles that on Tuesday struck an apartment building and warehouse in Kryvyi, killing 11 people and wounding dozens more. And then, here again, U.S. military aid. So on the same day, the U.S. announced it would send a new military aid package to Ukraine worth $325 million. We just, it's a blank check. It's just don't even question it here. Money, here. Weapons, tanks, bombs, bullets, just here. But then for the people, American people, they're going to start the student loan payments, and it's just and then they're going to charge with interest as well. It's fucking ridiculous, bro. It's ridiculous. Here as well. Separately, Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko suggested his country was receiving nuclear weapons from Russia that were 3 times more powerful than the atomic bombs used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He did not say whether they had already received that weapons or not, but claimed their deployment to Minsk was necessary to deter potential aggression. Earlier this month, Russia said it would deploy tactical nuclear weapons on Belarusian soil from July, seen as a warning to the West, which has increasing its military support for Ukraine. So, it's just, this is where we're at, They're just whatever, let's just start a nuclear war. Let's just escalate a nuclear war, because that's where we're about now, and that's what we love to do is, war and make money, and I don't even know where to start with that. And now just to look here real quick, at least from this counteroffensive. Actually, let me go to the Institute for the Study of War, because they have a much more updated map. Let me see that map here. But yes, usually, they are making some gains. Ukraine at least is. But I'm trying to see where those maps are. I want to see this map real quick. Okay. I don't even think they've updated it yet. Okay. Well. Okay, so they don't have the, at least because they have on the Institute for Study of War, they have interactive maps, like a time-lapse map. So they haven't updated it, at least for this counteroffensive just yet. But at the very least, there's some small gains made in different sections of the front line, mainly just small villages. But as I said, this is a typical strategy with Russia's, military doctrine, particularly with their defense in depth. So defense in depth, and it's just a question of whether Ukraine can continue as they grind themselves down through these trenches and these mines and just all these different defensive positions. I mean, they don't really have air superiority, so it's contested airspace, and a lot of their equipment is starting to get broken down, which requires the funding from the United States and the aid from the United States in the West. I mean, again, we're still in the early stages of this offensive, and we can speculate based on different World War II operations and like I said, defense in depth and such. But we're just gonna have to watch this in real time, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch this in real time and to see like one of the largest military operations since World War II unfold between like two conventional standing armies, So, again, I don't want to be trivial about this conflict because there's so many people that like talk about this war, and I don't know, they treat it like a game, I was like, oh, it's the good guys and the bad guys, and of course, you got NAFO, those, Doge posters and such. Who fucking cares? I mean, to them, it's like a game. It's like a sporting event when like there are real people dying here, Like anytime I see like any footage of like dead soldiers, it doesn't make me feel good at all. Like I feel very like it's really sad like to see dead soldiers like that. But then you look at the comments and then it's like, oh, Ukrainians, or I mean, they're all Russians. Oh, well, you fuck around and find out. And it's like, bro, like this is messed up, man. Like this should not be happening. And when you see those images, it should give you more of a reason why we need a peace agreement. So yeah, so here's hoping. I mean, we'll have to see how this war unfolds, but let's hope at least in due time that there is a peace agreement made. So yeah, so I did speak at length about the Ukrainian conflict, which is a big story. It's one of the biggest developments happening in the world right now. So yeah, so of course we're going to talk about it for a while. But here at least, I wanted to talk about some other deals and other geopolitical developments. At least now that we're talking about peace, and I want to be a little more positive at least. Because we're talking about the Ukrainian conflict, which is really sad, but this at least is sort of like some good news and some good developments. And in particular, it concerns this thawing of tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So Iran and Saudi Arabia had made a peace agreement with China. China brokered a peace deal, and now they're going to start opening diplomatic talks and their embassies. So this is good. It's good to see that they're finally making some changes and getting away from this like Cold War stance that they were having with the proxy wars in Yemen, and they're starting to open up diplomatic talks. And again, these are the big power players in the region, Saudi Arabia and Iran. So it's important that they get along. It's important because obviously we don't want war. Obviously we want peace in the Middle East, and this is the way that we do it, by diplomacy. And China is showing that. I mean, China is even, there was reports of China trying to broker a peace deal in Ukraine as well. So like, and that would be really fascinating if they actually managed to like convince Ukraine to like come to the table. Like, yeah, like, because they truly are like a neutral player. Like they just want peace, so there can be trade and commerce, and everybody can make some money. That's what China wants. Even though they're currently a communist government, like they haven't stepped away from that long Chinese heritage of let's make some money, man. Let's China loves trade. China loves commerce. They want, and the way to make trade and commerce is stability. So that's what they want. And of course, there's the Belt and Road Initiative that they've been doing, which people talk about. Oh, it's debt trap. Oh, they want to shackle all these different third world countries. But like, dude, like they've forgiven like billions of dollars in interest on those loans. So those countries are mainly paying back principal, and what they're developing is the infrastructure which would facilitate that development. Roads and bridges. So like those countries, first off, they're paying off the principal, so they're not getting jacked on interest. And secondly, it's towards their infrastructure, which would help facilitate that industrial production. Because like China doesn't really care if, China isn't going to invade a country if like they nationalize their resources. Like that's not going to happen. Anyway, but at least here now, because China's brokering a deal with Saudi Arabia and Iran, which is like not something that Russia or the United States would ever done. Like the United States would never imagine brokering a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's the reason why Saudi Arabia and Iran have been at each other's throats. It's because the United States. I mean, at least within this like current century, because I mean, there's differences between like the Sunni and Shia sects. So that's that's its own thing. That's like a millennia dispute, right? But at least with our current geopolitical situation, the United States has primarily been the main instigator between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So, of course, this peace deal has been protested by state officials because they want to isolate Iran. They want to disrupt that region. And yeah, they don't care. I mean, so long as they can, like that's the thing, too, you have to understand about U.S. foreign policy. It's like there's no, like, they don't really care about, oh, let's like uplift like this ally because, you know, they're helpful for our geopolitical interests. I mean, that's part of it. But also the part of it is just divide and conquer, destabilize the region. Like, let's pick a player who's able to work with us, and then they'll just bully everybody else, and we'll give them all the weapons and funding. But then also we'll secretly fund the other players as well, so that way they're not too weak and they can still stand up to, you know, they can be a check to our guys. Like, yeah, I mean, the U.S. is involved everywhere, and they're funding everybody. Because again, like, the U.S., like, you know, they had the Iran-Contra deal. Like, the U.S. has no problem doing business, like weapons deals with Iran. Okay, that was like Reagan and Oliver North. Okay, and you know, like, even like Iran was still like during, like, I think during the war on terror and like the invasion of Afghanistan, like, Iran was also pretty helpful and supportive even then as well. So like, when it's convenient for Iran and the United States, they'll work together. Like, they will. So yeah. So yeah, it's you know, at least with this development and this peace deal that was brokered between China, with China, between Iran and Saudi Arabia, this is a significant step for stability and security in the region, and hopefully at least a big step in brokering a peace deal with the Yemen war, which is a horrible war. But yeah, I mean, good. It's ultimately good because peace is good. So at least I'll talk at length about this development from Al Jazeera. Saudi Arabia and Iran's foreign ministers have met in Beijing for the first formal gathering since China brokered a peace deal to restore relations between the top regional powers last month. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud and his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian, I can't pronounce that, shook hands in the Chinese capital on Thursday. The officials said they have agreed to follow up on arrangements to reopen their diplomatic missions in their respective countries, to encourage visits of officials and private delegations, and to facilitate visas for Iranian and Saudi citizens. They also agreed to discuss resuming flights between them. Quote, the technical teams will continue coordination to examine the ways of expanding cooperation, including the resumption of flights and bilateral visits of official and private sector delegations, in facilitating the granting of visas for the citizens of the two countries, read a joint statement. So Iran's minister said the meeting with his Saudi counterpart was, quote, positive. Quote, the emphasis on stability and sustainable security were among the issues agreed upon, he wrote on Twitter. After years of hostility, the regional rivals agreed in March to restore ties in a landmark agreement brokered by China, a move that experts say demonstrated Beijing's increasingly influential role in the region in contrast to the diminishing role of the United States. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Mao Ning said on Thursday that Beijing is ready to support both sides in fostering good relations, urging the international community to help the Middle Eastern countries resolve their differences. Quote, the colonial hegemonic tactics of stirring up contradictions, creating estrangement and divisions should be rejected by people all over the world, she said. Abbas Aslani, a senior fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies, told Al Jazeera that Iran and Saudi Arabia were previously, quote, mostly focused on rivalry and tensions, but now they're talking about focusing on common ground, stressing cooperation, end quote. Quote, but on the bilateral level, to what extent they can go ahead depends on how the Saudis act, because Iran has been under economic sanctions by the West. That's what we have to see how they will proceed, he added, referring to sanctions placed on Iran over its nuclear program. So, yeah, that is the divisions there. There's talks about, it's promising, that they're trying to come together for this. The question is, how long this will last. Because sometimes, there's no doubt that there's going to be something down the line, some sort of flashpoint that might escalate tensions. I mean, at least in this instance, they've had rocky relations. There's religious differences between them. Disputes for like over millennia, pretty much. So this isn't just like our own contemporary geopolitical differences. Like this is an ancient rivalry, really. And it's just it's interesting. At least they're trying to make talks, and I think this is my own personal theory because you have the king that most likely will pass in some time. King Salman. Yeah, that's right. Let's see how old he's 87. So he's 87, and his heir, Mohammed bin Salman. He is most likely to take the throne. Yeah, MBS, and who knows what could happen after that. I mean, if we're being honest here, I think because he's younger. Like MBS, he's like 37 years old. So I think he's a little more. I'm not going to say progressive because he is the last person you would call progressive, but I think he's a little more mindful about the geopolitical situation, and possibly he's wanting to. He's brokering this deal in the effort to, I guess, legitimize his reign. Because I mean, the last thing that you want if you're like a new king is a war, right? I mean, maybe back in the olden days, sure, that's the way that you gain honor and prestige, just by going on a war and then taking some territory. But we're in a different time now, and of course, what you need is stability, and you need business, right? We need to be a partner in the region, and who knows? So this is probably something. I mean, again, this is my own personal theory, so I'm not really basing that on anything. But I think that this is just something that is being done as a preemptive sort of, laying the roses for MBS to take control, so that he has as little problems as possible. And again, I mean, this guy, like, he killed Jamal Khashoggi, so like he's not a good guy, like, at all. But at least I guess he's a little smart in that sense of, let's try to broker a deal and try to, offer some stability because that will help with my reign, that sort of thing, Anyway, that's at least the peace deal that's happening there with Iran and Saudi Arabia. But then, at least with Iran's situation, because, they were just talking about the nuclear program and the sanctions that they've had, they're kind of like, their position is a bit up there, up in the air. And of course, they've also had those political unrests and, protests happening, which I think some people are still following. I don't even know what's happening with that. But again, like, Iran is always going to have protests and unrest happening there. And it's just interesting to me because I know some Iranian folks who report on this, who at least, they'll post some stuff about the protests happening, but it's like, it's like, on the one hand, yes, I am sympathetic to protesters, and of course, like, they have a right to protest and want to demand freedom because it is a theocratic regime. At the same time, though, let's be real here, because I mean, the United States and their foreign policy position is, they would be pretty happy if there was like a revolution in Iran, and not even like a revolution, like, a proper like let's say like a left-wing, like, radical revolution, which would truly be good for Iran. Like, if something like that were to happen, like a true, like, left-wing, particularly feminist, because again, like, that was like the major thing about those protests was like the religious police and their dress code for women with hijab. So like, if some feminist, truly radical left-wing revolution took place in Iran, like, the US would not back that at all. And in fact, they would like actively support the Iranian government. So like, that's what would happen. So the US wants like a revolution, but they would also like it for it to like devolve into like a Syria situation where you have all these different militias fighting each other, and it just turns into like a genocide where like everybody's killing each other. Like, that's what the US wants to happen in Iran. So yeah, the US is not concerned about human rights at all, or the liberty and freedom. They want Iran to fall apart. They want to fall into this like civil war between these ethnic groups and these different militias, or they start killing each other. That's what the U.S. wants. Because this is sort of like, we're not really talking about at the moment the internal situation in Iran, but rather this is more of the dispute and clash that happened between Afghanistan and Iran. So this is like a military like border clash that occurred, and a lot of it is also concerning water. So this is where like geopolitics and now like these resource concerns and climate concerns are now starting to, become an issue, because now we're starting to see this happen now, where like these little small military clashes are occurring, particularly over these water concerns and resources. Because in places like I think Tajikistan and Turkmenistan, they've had some border clashes over water, and now Afghanistan and Iran are starting to have it as well. So at least I'll expand on this, what this article expands on. And this is Al Jazeera here. So here, just reading Al Jazeera. So last week, deadly clashes broke out between Afghan and Iranian guards at their border, raising fears of a new conflict. Both sides have accused each other of initiating the shooting, in which at least 2 Iranian and 1 Afghan guard were killed. However, they have issued measured statements aimed at de-escalating the situation. Following the border violence, Iranian authorities closed the Milak Zaranj border post, an important commercial crossing, and not decided the clash until further notice, Iran's IRNA news agency reported. Despite a treaty in place since 1973 on the sharing of Helmand River waters, the two sides have wrangled for decades. The river flows from Afghanistan towards eastern Iran. And then what caused the fighting? So the reasons for the clash are still unknown, but the shooting at the border post between the Afghan province of Nimroz and Iran's Sistan-Baluchistan province comes as Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi earlier this month accused Afghanistan's Taliban rulers of restricting flow of water to Iran's eastern regions in violation of the 1973 treaty. Quote, "We will not allow the rights of our people to be violated," Raisi said on May 18th. The Taliban, which has denied the accusation, called on to, quote, "solve the problem in accordance with the treaty. The Taliban, which remains diplomatically isolated since it came to power in August of 2021, said it wanted good relations with Tehran. So according to Sina Tuisi, a senior non-resident fellow at the U.S.-backed think tank, Center for International Policy, there is a, quote, "lack of clear demarcation and understanding of border boundaries and rules from Taliban fighters since their takeover of Afghanistan in 2021. So it's just fascinating to me how like these Taliban fighters, they're really just like, because you got to think about it, because like the Taliban for like the last like 20 years, they've been these sheep farmers and they've been hiding out in these caves, and they've been freedom fighters or terrorist insurgents, whatever. They've been guerrilla fighters. That's what they've been trained, and that's how they've lived for the past 20 years. And now they actually have control of a state. Like they're now a state. Like it's the Islamic Emirate. So like it's like a true like feudal kingdom or emirate. This theocratic state. So it's just interesting to see how like these adjustments that the Taliban are having, from being these Taliban fighters living on, living their lives and living out in the field, fighting and dying, and now they're actually like in charge of a state, which requires organization and bureaucracy. They have to be a proper state, and they have to have diplomacies, and they have to have their bureaus, and like there was like some articles that were written about these Taliban fighters, like they are like we're having like existential crises because like they're forced to work 9-to-5 jobs now. They're not like fighting out in the field. They're like there's just like regular office jobs, and they're like they're getting their lives sucked away, and it's like, oh man, so secretly the U.S. did win, like, but yeah. But that's the thing here, because they're having those problems, and especially, as they said, like, they don't fully understand, like, how borders work, I guess. Or I guess they have no respect for it. They're just like, whatever we walk, that's what we own. Again, there's, like, a real, like, feudal mindset with this. And, these are, like, border guards that are, trigger happy. And, yeah. So, anyway. So, here, just to continue. So, Iranian officials have repeatedly blamed the Taliban for its disregard for international laws and border protocols since its takeover of Afghanistan 2 years ago. Clashes have erupted on multiple occasions, but have rarely led to casualties and have routinely been blamed on misunderstandings. A day before the border clashes, Iran Foreign Minister called on the Taliban to follow legal framework to resolve the water dispute. So, yeah, they've had this water dispute, and again, this has been a treaty that they've had for a couple decades now. And it's so interesting, at least with Iran and Afghanistan, how like they had a treaty in the 70s, but then both countries have changed like governments since that time when that treaty was signed, and yet they're still like agreeing to those terms in to some degree, or at least this new Taliban government now is not agreeing as before. But yeah, let me at least expand on this river and how important it is. So the Helmand River, which is more than 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles, flows across the border, is being dammed on the Afghan side to generate electricity and irrigate agricultural land. Drought has been a problem in Iran for some 30 years, which has worsened over the past decade, according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. The Iranian Meteorological Organization says that an estimated 97% of the country now faces some level of drought. According to the Helmand Water Treaty signed by Afghanistan and Iran half a century ago, Afghanistan should annually share 850 million cubic meters of water from Helmand with Iran. It also calls on both sides to address their differences via diplomatic channels and, if that fails, through an advisory board headed by a mutually chosen arbitrator. Iran has accused Afghanistan of failing to adhere to the treaty on several occasions and has opposed its decision to construct dams on the river. So yeah, this is again the water concerns, the dam being built by Afghanistan, which threatens the downstream water supply, and that's leading to more tensions, especially with these climate concerns, because they're, as I said, they're getting increasing droughts, and then also you have to think about the water sources of those from the river, the Helmand, which almost certainly comes from the mountains, I guess the Hindu Kush mountains. Those glaciers up there, those are also going to decrease as well. So yeah, man, like that area is going to get water insecure, especially with the climate situation. Yeah, so again, this is going to escalate, and I'm almost certain like this is going to be something that's going to play out, especially like the specific like dam, geopolitical sort of differences. So like places like Ethiopia, Sudan, where the Nile River flows through, if they build a dam, like say in Ethiopia, like they have plans to build dams, that is going to cause issues with Sudan and Egypt, and that could lead to a flashpoint. So yeah, it's it's a pretty serious situation. These water war concerns are. So at least we're talking about these border clashes that are occurring from these concerns. But yeah, we are talking at least at length about and I just mentioned Egypt, at least these border concerns and these clashes that have occurred. But in Egypt and concerning Israel, there's been another development about like this border clash that occurred. Now, of course, Egypt and Israel, they aren't the closest of friends, but at least since the 70s, they've had a peace agreement and they've been chilled. They've been okay for the last couple of decades. So this is really like the first time, at least with this specific incident, where there has been a flashpoint, or at least it's not like they're going to go to war tomorrow, but at least this is like the first time where like Israeli and Egyptian officials were in a clash, or at least an incident where several died. So here what happened, and this is reading from CNN, they said 3 Israeli soldiers and the Egyptian policeman killed in a rare border crossing incident. So at least just read up on what they claim here, because it says that both sides are claiming different things, but what they're saying is that there was an Egyptian police officer who was chasing, I guess they're saying, some drug smugglers, and they crossed into Israeli territory, and then that was what caused a clash between the two, where Israeli soldiers getting killed in the process. So that's at least what's been highlighted so far, which of course, like, it's just something that's been interesting, and I shouldn't say interesting, but it's just that this had occurred, and this is like the first major like geopolitical flashpoint between Egypt and Israel for some time now. Which, I mean, this is a minor dispute, minor incident which they're gonna solve, but it just goes to show how like some things, at least between Israel and their Arab neighbors, they're not getting along. Of course, Israel, I mean, if you're listening to my show, I criticize them a lot, and it just doesn't help that they're a rabidly right-wing racist regime, Zionist colonialism. So on the one hand, this is like an unfortunate situation. On the other hand, I don't really feel much sympathy for the Israelis in this situation, or any situation really. Like, I just don't. But yeah, so I mean, at least here, there was the death of 3 soldiers, and this this Egyptian police officer, just a quick little incident that occurred. But this kind of like encapsulates a larger issue, at least within Israel, because right now they're in a precarious situation, and I don't mean just like within like Israel, like among their neighbors and the Palestinians and their Arab neighbors. So it's not just that which Israel is in. There are in a serious tensions and serious flashpoints, but then also domestically, Israel is under some pretty significant and dramatic changes. And not too long ago, there was the protests that occurred as a result of Benjamin Netanyahu firing the defense minister after he had made some comments regarding these judicial reforms, and he was imploring that these reforms be delayed because the reservists in the country, they were saying that they were going to refuse reporting to duty. So like this is all like a cascading effect where you see Benjamin Netanyahu and his Likud government, his like right-wing coalition that's like rabidly fanatical. I mean, these people are like, they're really bad. These are evil like people. They are making their deals. They want to establish more judicial reforms that would effectively undercut. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the political establishment and systems of Israel, but my understanding, at least with the judicial system, is that it's far more independent. So they're doing their own thing, and they're meant to be a check against the executive and the legislator, which is what these reforms are trying to undermine. They're trying to make it so that the judicial reforms and the judicial actual department is more under the control of the executive. So that's what they're really protesting here. At least wanted to talk on, in BBC and what they're reporting here. So just to report real quick, at least on this development domestically, which is really one of the biggest domestic protests in Israeli history. This is huge. So this is a very serious crisis, and that's really dividing Israel between the secular, and again they're all right wing Zionists. So it's when you talk about the left in Israel, it's they're still pretty conservative and right wing, and they're all part of the Zionist project of colonizing and expelling Palestinians. So they're all on the same page about that. But it's whether or not that tyranny, because it's that tyranny, they're okay with it being against Palestinians, but then it starts affecting them, and then that's when they get on the street, So that's really what it's all about. So yeah, there's the left, and then there's the right, and of course the right wing is ultra nationalist, like Jewish supremacist. So it's a mess. It's a mess, really, this whole situation in Israel, which, like, I want them both to lose. Like, I just don't want Israel to win at all. Like, my hope is that they undermine themselves so much that they get overtaken by these Palestinians and the other Arab neighbors, because, like, they don't belong there. And, like, I don't care what anybody says, oh no, they're indigenous. No, they're not. They're not indigenous, okay? Because Palestinians are already living there. The Palestinians are indigenous. That land needs to be Palestine. So, end of story. Anyway, so just reading from BBC, what's happening in Israel. So, quote, since the start of the year, huge weekly protests have been held by people opposed to the government's reform plans. The scale of the protests has escalated, with hundreds of thousands of people packing in the streets of Tel Aviv, Israel's commercial capital, and other towns and cities across the country. Protesters have called for reforms to be scrapped and for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to resign. His political rivals have spearheaded the protests, though the fierce opposition to the reforms have cut across political lines. Significantly, a number of military reservists, the backbone of Israel's armed forces, have protested by threatening to refuse to report to duty, triggering warnings that the crisis even threatens Israel's security. The government argues that voters elected it on a promise of reforming the judiciary, which it considers as interfering too much with legislation, biased on liberal issues, and undemocratic in the ways judges are selected. Okay, and then let's continue here. So why are people so angry? So Mr. Netanyahu's opponents say the reform bill will severely undermine the country's democracy by weakening the judicial system, which historically has kept a check on the government's use of its powers. Underlying this is strong opposition to the kind of government currently in office, the most right-wing in Israel's history, and to Mr. Netanyahu himself. Critics say the reforms will shield Mr. Netanyahu, who is currently on trial for alleged corruption. He denies the charges and helped the government pass laws without any breaks. And then here, just a quick review, at least with their reforms and those details. So, right, under the government's plan, the power of the Supreme Court to review or throw out laws would be weakened, with the simple majority of one of Knesset, or the parliament, able to overrule court decisions. And then the second point, the government would have a decisive say over who becomes a judge, including in the Supreme Court, by increasing its representation on the committee which appoints them. And then third point, ministers would not be required to obey the advice of their legal advisors, guided by the Attorney General, which they currently have to by law. So it's just like, again, it's just like, it's like think about it this way. It's like whenever you go to a kid's like baseball game and then like he just changes the rules so that he can make it so that he wins, that sort of thing, right? It's like, I'm going to change the rules to make it so I win and everybody loses or whatever. And it's just so funny too. Because, he's under investigation and on the trial for corruption. And he's like, oh, I'm on a trial for corruption. By the way, I'm going to change the courts so that they don't prosecute me for corruption. Oh my God, dude. What a great system. Democracy in the Middle East. Am I right? Anyway, this is just a mess for Israel. But again, like, I don't really care. Like, I just hope Israel loses. Like, nothing would make it so much, like, nothing would be more poetic if Israel's downfall was internal. And then they tried to blame the Palestinians or, the Arabs and such. No, it was internal the whole time. It was because you guys were rabid, racist, apartheid, fucking Zionists. And then you made a deal with the devil with these fucking Orthodox, like, again, and I don't mean to, like, because, of course, when you make criticisms of Israel, then it's like, oh, you're being anti-Semitic. It's like, notice how I criticize Israel, the state, and not Judaism. Or at least, I criticize this radical sect of Judaism, Zionism. But, I'm not attacking Israel or the culture or the faith. It's just, I am attacking Israel. I'm not attacking Judaism. It's just, yeah. I don't mean to get the two confused, but I criticize Israel, and that's merely the state and their actions against the Palestinians, which is undeniable. It's like, I mean, dude, it's so documented at this point. And like, these people shoot babies. They shoot babies, dude. There was like a recent story of this kid, this fucking, oh my god, like, I just, like, it almost made me cry because it was such a cute kid, but like, it was like a baby. They just shot him in the head. And he was walking with his dad. And then, this is what I mean, man. And then it's just like, well, no, because Hamas and Hezbollah, blah. It's just like, bro, maybe Hamas and Hezbollah wouldn't exist if Israel didn't ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. Hello? Oh well. But anyway, as I said, like, nothing would be more poetic if Israel's downfall was ultimately internal. It was ultimately their own doing, because they're just so rabidly obsessed and like right wing, and they're just violent. That's what they are. And again, that's like pretty much all like right wing, like radical movements. Like, they always implode because they're self-destructive. Yeah. So at least here in Israel, we're seeing the comeuppance, like, because like, and then they talk about Netanyahu on Ben Gvir, right? I mean, he has been like a radical. I mean, he was literally like on the U.S. like terrorism like registry. Like, this guy was bad. Like, these people were bad. Okay, they're very dangerous, and they even I think one of the like pauses that they did, because they initially were trying to move it ahead, and then these protests got big, and then it took a step back. At least, I mean, they're going to bring it up on the next legislative session, I think. But yeah, they established the National Guard, which is like a paramilitary force meant to be under the control of Ben Gvir and like a personal bodyguard for Netanyahu. And like, they're going to start recruiting all these different like West Bank settlers who are like rabidly fanatical. Okay, like, you think about in Israel and like the establishment there that's like, right wing and like ultra nationalist and supremacist, Jewish supremacist, and then they go to the West Bank and those settlements, and that's like literally clan country out there. Like, just imagine Jewish clan country. That's what it is. This is just crazy. These people are fucking assholes, man. And then it's just justified. Like it's so well documented, the abuse that they commit towards Palestinians and the violence that they commit towards Palestinians. But at any moment you talk about free Palestine and you're anti-Semitic. And then you look at this. Like, they'll beat up elderly people. Yeah, they beat up on elderly people. They shoot children. They shoot journalists. They shoot activists and peaceful protesters. They don't give a shit, and they have no accountability. Nothing. You can't say anything about it. And if anything, like, it's justified. Like, because Hamas and Hezbollah, they're so violent, so that's why Israel has to shoot a 2-year-old in the fucking head while he's walking with his dad. Great. Awesome country, bro. Yeah. Fuck off. Fucking. Oh my god. Yeah, I hope it falls apart. I hope Israel falls apart. I really do. I'm saying that online. Like, I hope they implode. So, anyway. Yeah, so that's the international like geopolitics that we were talking about. And just want to at least wanted to wrap up on the last section here. I mean, I've talked a lot, but there's a lot to speak on. So just to finish up in the last portion here, so there is the natural segment, natural disasters, weather events, just like nature in general, climate. So that's something to at least expand on. And just recently, we had some like phenomena occur in New York, in the East Coast, as a result of the wildfires in Canada. I mean, Canada wildfires, I mean, they're just going off the charts and burning up like thousands of hectares of land. So it's a serious national crisis that's occurring over there. But then also the smoke that's coming from that has been, affecting us as well in the United States. And so the smoke was so severe that in places like New York, it was so heavy I mean, it affected the air quality. I mean, it was like the sky was red and orange. Like, people were posting memes like from Blade Runner 2049, but for real, like that's what it looked like. It looked apocalyptic. And you look at like the air quality surveys, and like it says like literally like wear a gas mask, like stuff like that. Like, when I see stuff like that, now I want to get a gas mask. Like, that's one of the things on my shopping list now, to get a gas mask, because I don't know if we're going to have any natural disasters or any fires out here in my area. The good thing, at least in my area, like for the last couple months, there's been lots of rain. So like the ground and the plants out here, there's plenty of water. So I'm not worried about a drought out here. Maybe next summer. So, yeah, so... Still, though, a gas mask would not hurt. But yeah, this is messed up, man. And I have lots of family in New York, so it'll be interesting to see like what they said about that. Who knows, man? It's just a crazy time that we're living in, and like still like stuff like this happen, and then like, oh nope, there's no climate disaster. Like you hear fucking Fox News, and they're like, yeah, oh, they're saying that this is a climate. This I can't believe Fox News. Like, this is like one of the biggest media agencies in the world, or at least in the United States, and like they are literally just spreading. It's hate propaganda. It's denial. Like, it's all this climate bullshit. Like, I think even at one point, like there was like a class action lawsuit against Tucker Carlson, which of course now he got fired, thank God. But I think like, in the official statement, their argument was that, well, we don't consider ourselves news. We actually consider ourselves an entertainment agency. So it's like, even they themselves, they call themselves Fox News, but they're not news. Like, it's just hate propaganda. It's just propaganda, conservative propaganda that is genocidal. And honestly, like, because I mean, they talk about freedom of press, and like, no, man, that shit should be banned. Like, honestly, like Fox News should unironically be banned. Like, pretty much most like right-wing conservative talking points should be banned, really, because there's no substance to it. It's just hate propaganda. Fucking like, oh, we're gonna let Nazis talk because we need freedom of speech. No, bro, it's fucking hate propaganda. Like, ban that shit. Anyway, so we're talking about New York and these air quality concerns. The smoke concerns that occurred. I mean, even for a short period of time, like New York had like the unhealthiest air quality because how dense the smoke was. And I mean, dude, I can't even imagine that. Like, I get like, whenever there's like pollen in the air, like I'm incapacitated. Like, I can't go anywhere. So I can't even imagine like smoke, like, oh my God. Like, I would have to walk around with a gas mask, goggles to keep my eyes from, burning. Like, dude, fuck that shit. Anyway, so just reading at least from CNBC, because they talk about this air quality, but also how there was in LaGuardia and like other airports in the area, the air quality was so thick that they had to like delay flights. So like that's how severe it was. So at least reading from CNBC. So right, the Federal Aviation Administration on Wednesday halted some flights bound for New York's LaGuardia Airport as smoke from Canada's wildfires cut visibility in the area. The FAA said the affected flights were scheduled to fly from the East Coast and Upper Midwest to LaGuardia. Visibility was also causing delays at Newark Liberty International Airport. The smoke drifting south from wildfires in Canada blanketed New York City on Tuesday into Wednesday, tainting the area's air quality and sending residents indoors. As of noon Wednesday, the city ranked 4th in the world for worst air quality with an IQ Air World Quality Index of 158, a level considered unhealthy for all residents. And I think even later on, like it got to like something like 300, like the air quality projection. So pretty serious developments, and that's at least happening in New York. But it's just fascinating to me that we're now starting to get these like air quality disasters that are happening, where like we have this smoke, and it's like, oh, okay, it happens at least like one summer. There's like wildfires, but then like what happens when this sort of thing happens year after year? Okay, So imagine next year there's more wildfires, and then that causes the air quality to get polluted, and then again next year, and then again and again. Like, that's gonna add up, and people are gonna get sick from that. Like, for real. Like, and that's just the thing that's gonna happen. I mean, of course, the West Coast, they have their own wildfires, and that gets pretty bad as well. And I don't know about Texas. I mean, soon enough, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have our own droughts and fires as well. It's only a matter of time. So, yeah. So that's what's happening in New York, and that was just interesting. I mean, again, people. It's just funny how like we have these natural disasters happening, literally like apocalyptic, sort of like smoke and dust storms, and like people are just making memes about it. So it's just funny to see how people are, making light of this otherwise dark and serious situation. So yeah, so at least we'll continue from that. So I mean, we're talking about like the wildfires there. But then also now here, there's like kind of like the flip side of that, where we're talking about water, water supplies and water concerns for the future, which are going to become more heightened. And of course, with Iran and the Taliban, I talked about those water disputes that happened. Now, at least, because that's more of a diplomatic and geopolitical situation. And of course, it's like in a region that's like, like the Middle East, Central Asia. There's always going to be some sort of conflict. So, not to be derogatory, because that's that gets very touchy, at least in the global South, when you talk about war and conflict. But it's again, like the Middle East and Central Asia. Those are like one of the major flashpoints for the water wars that are being projected. Now, again, that's not the only place that's going to have water concerns and water disputes, because now we're starting to get that within the United States internally. And I wanted to at least touch upon, this new development in Arizona, new regulations, water regulations that are happening, because, water concerns and water disputes are going to start becoming a problem internally within the United States. Like, that's going to start happening, particularly in the Southwest, Sunland region, Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, those states. But at least to highlight this, because what this highlights, at least this new regulation, it affects the construction. There are new regulations affecting the groundwater and how that would affect construction. It's just, it's like it's inescapable. Like you literally need water to survive, and in this case, you need water to build and to develop and expand, and so this is going to start having an effect as the water concerns get more drastic. So at least I'm reading from Fox 10, like a local Phoenix station. So Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs announced construction around Phoenix will be limited moving forward to protect groundwater supplies. This comes after Arizona was one of 3 southwestern states to reach a historic agreement to cut millions of gallons of Colorado River water usage over the next 4 years. What we're learning is that Hobbs is pausing water supply certificates that rely solely on groundwater. She says it will only impact new development, not current development. Quote, "For generations, groundwater has supported Arizona communities. In times of shortage, it is groundwaters that we turn to as a backup. In many communities throughout Arizona, it is the only water supply available, so we must use it wisely." Driving the state's decision using a projection that showed that over the next 100 years, demand in Metro Phoenix for almost 4.9 million acre feet of groundwater would be unmet without further action. An acre foot of water is roughly enough for 2 to 3 households per year. Despite the move, the governor said the state isn't running out of water. Quote, "Nobody who has water is going to lose their water," Hobbs said. Officials said the move would not affect existing homeowners who already have assured water supplies. Hobbs released a study analyzing valley groundwater supplies for the next century. She says it allows certainty for businesses and communities. Quote, "If we do nothing, we could face a 4% shortfall in groundwater supplies over the next 100 years. We have to close this gap and find efficiencies for our water use, manage our aquifers wisely, and increase our utilization of renewable supplies. Closing that gap includes pausing water supply certificates." quote, everywhere in the Phoenix AMA or active management areas where a new development or certificate is sought, we will not be able to approve that certificate based on solely on groundwater. There are other ways they can meet certificate requirements. They can bring in not groundwater resources outside AMAs. They can utilize long-term storage credits that are already underground for their purposes. For these purposes, they can use unreclaimed water, said Arizona Department of Water Resources Director Ham said there is a bipartisan solution moving forward through legislation to address underlying issues like the Rio Verde water situation. So it's not necessarily like saying that all construction is paused. It's just, and I'm not too familiar again with like this air construction requirements, but the part of it is that they have to, in order to get that certification, they have to like actually outline like what their water supplies are from, at least their requirements and like their I guess the volume of water that they're using for the construction and the sourcing of it. So in this instance, they're not allowing certification based solely on groundwater. So they can get their own water in and they can get that certification that way, but not solely from the groundwater. So now that got me thinking about a business opportunity, like if there was water transportation in Phoenix, like that would be huge. Like water transportation would be a huge business now. So now that I got my entrepreneur hat on, but of course that's not something I would ever do. But hey, you're hearing it from me. So I mean, if you want to get in there in Phoenix, look into water transportation, right? Anyway, so that's at least the water shortages and those concerns there. And of course, we're talking about like the next century, how they're going to have to manage and ration the water, the groundwater and all that stuff. So, that's where we're heading. Like imagine like it's like Phoenix is like just literally just Arrakis, like oh, water is precious, like anyway, so just continuing here. So we're talking about different natural disasters and events, wildfires, water concerns, and at times also talk about pandemics and different diseases, at least here. And this is a little more of an upbeat story. I mean, it's still pretty messed up, but it's a bit more upbeat. Talking about recent developments with wildlife, because that's also a big concern of mine. I'm really big on preservation of the ecosystem and our wildlife. But here we have these instances of these orcas. Now, I'm sure some of y'all heard about this. The orcas are fighting back, and I'm here for it. I love it. Everybody's pro orca. Because what they're doing essentially now is they're attacking these yachts and these boats. This specifically, they're saying like it's a pod off the Gibraltar, in the Mediterranean. So this pod of orca are targeting boats in yachts, and like they're taking out the rudder, and they're just like tossing the boats around. And I think they've sunk a couple, and this has never been recorded. I mean, look, like orcas have been known for quite some time now. So, I mean, there might be some isolated events like in the past where there might have been some dispute or like some incident with an orca. But this is really like the first time where you're seeing like, and this is what these scientists are reporting, is that the orca are organizing, because of course, they're highly social, intelligent creatures. So they're organizing and they're teaching each other these skills on how to disable the boat. So like, this is a truly organized like thing that's happening by these orca, and I mean it's just funny. Like it's just hilarious to me because like, anytime nature fights back, I'm pro nature. I'm like yes, and again they're targeting yacht goers. So it's always like these like, like I'm guessing like some British tourists on the yacht because like they love vacationing in southern Spain. So Ibiza, right? Like so yeah, it's just nice to see that nature is fighting back, and they're like, it's funny. It really is. It's just the orca wars have begun. But yeah, at least I just wanted to touch up on some quotes here. So here, just talking about, I'm reading from the Insider. So here, they say here, a British sailor had the rudders of his yacht ripped off by orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar in the latest of several orca incidents in the area in recent months. Ian Hamilton is now marooned in Gibraltar, a British overseas territory on Spain's south coast, after a pod of 5 orca attacked his yacht, he told BBC Radio 4's Today program on Monday. He said he was sailing 20 miles west off the coast when he noticed a fin near his boat, followed by a series of increasingly jerky bumps. Quote, there was a very large whale pushing along the back of the boat, trying to bite the rudder, he told BBC Radio 4, adding that the big orca, along with 4 smaller killer whales, repeatedly bumped against the yacht. Quote, then one of them managed to take off the rudder, he said. Hamilton said it was quite concerning to be left with only one rudder, but the situation turned from bad to worse when the second rudder was torn off. So they're so smart. They're like, oh, there's a second one, and they took it off. So it's like, it's so great. It's I love it. I love whales. Like they're awesome. Yeah. So quote, we had no mechanism for steering the boat, he said. Hamilton added that the orcas, quote, pushed us around like ragdolls. The sailor told Radio 4 that he felt as though the orca were being almost playful rather than aggressive, adding that they would have had the strength to destroy his yacht quickly if they wished to. So yeah, so it's not like they're doing it maliciously. It's just a game to them. Because orca is very intelligent, and like there's really no incident that I've read of like any sort of like killer whale, like actually like killing a person, except for those like in captivity, SeaWorld whales. But again, like that's different because like they're literally prisoners. Like those whales are smart enough to realize that they're captives and they want to kill their captors. But those in the wild, they've never touched a person, like never. Or actually, let's check that up. So like, has an orca ever attacked a human in the wild? Let's see here. So right, so there are no documented reports of wild, free-living orcas ever intentionally killing or attacking humans. So, in the wild, they have never attacked any humans. And again, like, you think about like, so think about like the Inuit, right? Because like orcas, they live up in the Arctic, right? So the Inuit or other, Pacific Northwestern tribes, Arctic tribes, and they live in conjunction with, they live around the orca. Like to them, orca are like spiritual animals. So the fact that they have never, like in any of their stories either, like there's no mythology of like orcas killing people. It just really shows like these are truly peaceful creatures. Of course, they're called killer whales, and they are predatory animals, but they don't hurt people outside of captivity. It's like you have to put the little caveat, like outside of captivity, but it makes sense. Like, don't put a giant whale like in the pool for like their whole lives. I don't know, man. Like, it's just sad when you look at how the orca live. And I remember as a kid, like, seeing the orca. So, like, I love those whales. Like, I really do. And I mean, how can you not? They're so majestic. But then you learn the truth of those conditions, and you just want them to be free. Free willy. Yeah, but this is so funny. And I just wanted to talk about it because, again, like, nature's healing. Nature's fighting back. And, it's just funny to see that they're playing around with these yachts. And like, they're like, the guy's just like, okay, well, he took the one rudder off and then they went for the second one. So like, they really know, they really understand how these things work and like how to disable it. And again, as this person said, like they're treating it like a game, which kind of makes sense because they're predatory animals. Like they have to train themselves like that. So, it's, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's at least just a quick recap of that. So, I did talk at length. I mean, this is a long episode, probably one of the longest I've ever recorded. But yeah, I think because I was going to talk about El Nino, but this is getting long, and that's something for a later time. So at least now, and part of it's also my throat's starting to get raw. But yeah, that's what I wanted to touch up on for today, because there's just been a lot happening, and I recorded at least a month ago, so I just wanted to catch up on that. Again, I took some time through May just to enjoy the summer, take some time off, but I at least now want to be a little more consistent, a little more active. And I know I talked about trying to switch from jobs. I mean, I try to apply for positions, and even then those positions aren't really worthwhile, so it's like I'll do the interview, and then it's like, oh, we offer 15 an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll still have my position because at least I'm getting 19 an hour. But it feels like I'm going to get fired like any second. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm like one of those people that like, I know I need to make a move, but then like the move is such a fucking headache. It's like I want to stay where I'm at, but then, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I got to think this through. And again, like I really don't want to move my career until I graduate. Like I want my degree, then I can get that position or move up. I don't know. It's just it's just trying to balance between that and the time that I have for school. I mean, luckily this upcoming semester I only have 2 classes and they're both online, so that should be easier to manage and work with. And at least I'm wrapping up with graduation. But I don't know, it's bittersweet, looking at this last stretch, and like I just need everything to stay in place. Like, it's like one of those situations where everything's okay, but one thing goes wrong and it all unravels. And that's why I'm so anxious and so scared all the time, because I'm like, I just need everything to hold together till my graduation, and I can't have anything go wrong, which is fucked up because nothing goes wrong in life. It's just like, or nothing goes right. Anyway, I don't mean to get too personal and depressed, but it's doing the best that I can. At least this summer, I have my free time to do what I need to do. Like I said, I want to do more research, and like I have this podcast, but I also want to do more research and for like video, like essays and documentaries. So again, like the thing about that is I have to do a lot of research for that. So I've released a couple videos, but those have been like really just quickly, patched together. Not the best quality. I know I can do much better. So that's just something that, for later on with these documentary ideas in mind, I want it to be a little more official, like with actual documentation and resources and citation. But yeah, that's where I want to expand this program, at least with this podcast, just to get things rolling and, just to make sure that I offer the best quality that I can, some information. At the same time, I'm still learning it as I go. And, in a lot of ways, like I really probably would need a management team. I don't know, like social media management team. But the question is like, who would accept me? Who wants to be associated with the Doomer or Collapse Talk guy, Oh, well, I guess that's something for later. And again, like, I really need to focus on graduating first, and then I can start fully committing to this, like, full time. So for the moment, still trying to get things off the ground, trying to at least stay consistent, but I do have to focus on some real world personal stuff, get my feet on the door for career, get my degree, at least have some financial stability. But then, also with this to make it more consistent, and at least, for the moment, as I said, doing the research and the I guess, get the script writing right and such, that is something down the line. But anyway, I'll of course release that in due time, so y'all will hear about that. But yeah, I mean, this was a long episode, so I'm sure, I sure hope that this is something that can hold your time between episodes. I definitely, I try to at least have like a good timetable with each episode, but then again, sometimes there's just a lot to talk about, and so that's what I did with this episode. Just went and talked. So at least this should be enough content for a couple weeks for y'all. But anyway, so do appreciate for those who have listened this long. So I know I talked a lot. So if you like truly sat down and listened just one sitting for this, like you're a real homie. You're a real OG. So really appreciate it. Again, if you're not a supporter on Patreon, I would highly appreciate it if you consider me for that. Just check me out, Patreon. I'll have the link, at least with my YouTube. But anyway, appreciate everybody listening in. And also, just hang in there. I mean, it's going to be a long summer, so I hope, for those who, at least if you're in a low place, right? If some things are going wrong, at least, hopefully this summer is some time to relax and enjoy yourself. Again, like I'm not really doing like a big vacation or anything like that. I'm staying home. Like, I'm going nowhere. But at least, I'm going to work out, or at least try my best to work out, focus on this program, develop that some more, do my research. Again, like, I just like researching for fun. So, it's just something to do. Just do whatever you need to. It's summer, enjoy your time. But yeah, so appreciate those listening in, and thank you. Hang in there. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.